764 Srimad-Bhagavad-gita Chapter 6 When the devotee sees God everywhere, God also sees him everywhere, because Lord Krishna declares, however, men approach me, so do I seek them, viz., carry out their desires. Gita 4:11. It means that when a devotee identifies himself with God, God in his universal self, sees him everywhere. Thus, he is never out of his sight. Now, a question arises, why Lord Krishna says that the devotee only is never out of his sight when he declares that none is out of my sight, I know the beings of the past, the present and the future. 726. The answer is that though none is out of sight of the Lord sees him everywhere, who sees the Lord everywhere. But, for those who have a disinclination for God, and are attached to the world, he is not manifest. Gita 7:25. Because of his disinclination for him, he also remains out of his sight. Lord Krishna declares, in the 29th verse of the 9th chapter, I am equally present in all beings, there is none hateful or dear to me. But they who worship me with devotion, are in me and I also am in them. Appendix: in the preceding verse the Lord mentioned the soul, self, but now he mentions the Supreme Soul, God. A striver following the discipline of meditation because of the past impression of knowledge, has predominance of discrimination, while the other striver, having the impression of devotion, has predominance of faith and belief. Therefore the Dhyanagu with a latent impression of knowledge discriminately sees the self present in all beings. Gita 6:29. While the Dhyanagu having the latent impression of devotion with faith and belief sees God everywhere. Yomarn Pasyati Sarvatra Sarvarn Cami Pasyati. The expression Yomarn Pasyati Sarvatra means that he sees me in others and also in himself. The expression Sarvarn Cami Pasyati means that he sees others in me and also sees himself in me. As snow is lying everywhere, then how will it hide? If snow is put behind the snow, then also snow will be seen. Similarly, when God manifests himself in all forms, then how can he hide? Where can he hide and behind whom can he hide? The reason is that there is no other entity except God. The Supreme Soul, God. There is no division of the body and the self, the real and the unreal, the insentient and the sentient, God and the world. Saguna, with attributes, and Nirguna, without attributes, Sakara, with form, and Nirakara, without form, etc. Him only, there are several divisions, and in several divisions only he prevails. He is not an object to be known by discrimination, but he can be known by faith and belief. Therefore all as God a striver should assume it, he should accept it with faith and belief. If he accepts this truth firmly, he will realize the same truth. A striver first sees God far away, then he sees him nearby. After it he sees him in himself, and finally he sees only God. A karmagi sees God nearby, a jnanagi sees him in himself, and a bhaktiyogi sees God pervading everywhere. The relationship between a devotee and the Lord is further elucidated. He, who established in union with me, worships me as abiding in all beings, though engaged in all forms of activities, dwells in me. 31. Comment: in the previous verse, Lord Krishna explained that he is never out of sight of a devotee, nor is he ever out of sight of him. Why? Because a devotee identifies himself with God, who abides in all beings, viz., he develops intense love for him. In accordance with non-dualistic principle, a devotee has no identity of his own. His identity is merged in the Lord, while, in dualistic tenets, the Lord and the devotee assume separate entities outwardly, though inwardly they are one and the same, just as a husband and a wife possessing two different bodies regard themselves as one, and so two friends, who deem themselves as one due to intense love, duality does not exist. A devotee, who worships God, with wholehearted devotion, gets established in communion with him. This oneness and the sameness of a devotee and God is called ekatvamasita. God pervades everywhere in all persons, things, incidents and circumstances, etc., viz., all is God. He puts on the appearance of the entire phenomenon. 7119. This is his worship to God. By this phrase, it seems as if God abides only in beings, but actually it is not so. He abides in each and every particle of the universe. In ornaments made of gold there is nothing but gold. When ornaments were not made, there was gold. Even now gold exists in them, and there will remain gold even when the ornaments are broken or spoiled. But It does not mean that there is gold only in those ornaments, not anywhere else. Similarly, God existed before the creation of the world. He exists now, and he will exist at the end of the creation. But, to explain the fact that all beings are just like ornaments, and God is like gold, it is said that only God abides in all beings, and he also abides at all places. In the discipline of knowledge, the devotee identifies himself with God and loses his identity, while in the discipline of devotion to exchange and enhance true, spiritual, love, the Lord and the devotee like Sri Krishna and Radhaji, being one and the same, become two. He, while discharging his duties, according to the ordinance of the scriptures, abides in me, because in his view there is no independent entity, except me. ID the 13th chapter. In the context of the discipline of knowledge, Lord Krishna announced, even though engaged in all sorts of activities, he is not born again. 13:23, while here, he says, though engaged in all sorts of activities, he dwells in me. He is not born again, means that he is emancipated. He dwells in me means that the devotee, by becoming one with God, has a unique relish of spiritual love, which is infinite and which ever enhances. Here, Lord Krishna says, that devotee dwells in him. Here a question arises, whether other creatures don't dwell in him. The answer is, that all creatures dwell in him, but by attaching importance to the world, they neither know, nor accept that they dwell in him. They, because of egoism and mindness, uphold this universe. Gita 7:5. They don't regard the world as manifestation of God, but regard it as a separate entity and attach importance to it by declaring, we are worldly people, while a devotee realizes that it is God who manifests himself as multitudinous beings, viz., so all is God, and so a devotee always dwells in him. Appendix: a devotee sees the entire universe as the manifestation of God. From his viewpoint, besides God no other entity exists. For him the seer, onlooker, the seen and that act of seeing, all the three are only the manifestation of God. Vasudeva Sarvam, Gita 7:19. As the Ganges is worshipped with the water of the Ganges, similarly a devotee's all dealings are focused on God. As a person who has identified himself with the body, while performing all actions, dwells in the body, similarly such a devotee while discharging his duties, abides in God. In the 13th chapter the Lord declares, Ajnanogi, performing duties in every way, is not born again, and here he declares for a devotee sarvathavardhamanapi sayogi mai vartate, viz., a devotee engaged in all forms of activities, dwells in me. It means that by the path of knowledge a striver is freed from the cycle of birth and death and he attains salvation, but by the path of devotion, he is freed from the cycle of birth and death, attains oneness with God and develops intimate kinship with him. The same idea has been expressed in the Gita in the following ways: 6:30, 9:29. In the discipline of knowledge, because of the presence of an iota, trace, of subtle ego, there can be philosophical differences, but in the discipline of devotion, because of oneness with God, not even an iota of subtle ego and the philosophical differences caused by the ego remain. In a striver, having realized the self gets established in the self remains, while in Sayogi Mai Vartate only God remains. The yogi does not remain as a yogi, but he becomes an embodiment of God. Link says, now Lord Krishna explains the merit of an enlightened yogi, who believes in God, who is without form and attributes. That yogi, 0 Arjuna, is regarded as supreme, who looks on all as one, like his own body, and who sees the pleasure and pain of all, with a similar eye. Comment: what has been mentioned, as identified with Brahma, the Absolute, or attainment of infinite bliss, in the 27th and 28th verses respectively. In this verse, Lord Krishna explains the behavior of such an enlightened yogi towards others. Such a yogi is devoted to the welfare of all beings. 525, 1214. An ordinary person regards the injury of any of his limbs as his own, because according to him he and his limbs are one and the same. But a yogi regards others as his own self and thinks of their harm as his own harm. If any afflicted person comes before him, then that yogi tries to alleviate the suffering of that man in the same way as he attempts to alleviate the suffering of any limb of his own body, meaning thereby that as an ordinary man is engaged in providing comfort to his body, so too the yogi is automatically engaged in making others happy. Sarvatra, everywhere, means that he is engaged in promoting the welfare of all beings without any distinction of caste, creed and color, and does good, even to animals, birds, trees and plants, etc. By him, efforts are automatically made to alleviate their suffering. He knows that limbs have different shapes and functions, yet he makes efforts to soothe the afflicted limbs equally. Hands cannot be used as feet. If by chance a hand is touched by another hand, we do not wash it. But if it touches a foot, it is to be washed. When an organ of excretion is cleaned by a hand, we wash the hand with clay. Thus, one observes touchability and untouchability with others, also in accordance with the ordinance of scriptures. But it does not mean that he hates them. He loves all of them and does good to them, as he does to his own limbs. To feel happy and sad, on the analogy of his body, does not mean that if a person is injured, this enlightened soul feels that injury in his body. If it were taken as such, the affliction of the enlightened soul would be enormous, because the world is full of afflicted persons. It means that as an ordinary and ignorant person attached to his body makes efforts to relieve bodily pain promptly, an enlightened soul does the same to others, and as an ignorant man is not proud of such actions performed for his body, an enlightened one is also not proud of performing these for others. He is naturally engrossed in the welfare of others. Moreover, an enlightened soul can bear his bodily pain and remain indifferent to it, but he cannot bear the pain of others, and so always remains prepared to relieve their suffering. So he thinks that he has the power to bear the pain, as he knows that he himself is different from his body, while the ignorant people have no power to bear the pain, as they identify themselves with their bodies. Indra, the king of the gods, beheaded sage Dadisi, though the latter had caused no offense to the former. Dadisi was brought to life by Asvini Kumaras, the twin sons of the sun, who are supposed to be the physicians of the gods. But when Indra demanded bones of Dadisi to make a thunderbolt, Dadisi offered him his bones by abandoning his body. Here a question arises, that an enlightened soul is prepared to remove the pain of others, while he shows indifference to his own bodily pain, and suggests that he lacks equanimity. The answer is that this attitude is superior to equanimity, because it becomes his nature, without having the least unevenness of mind. Sayogi Paramomata. That yogi is regarded as supreme, because he sees nothing but God pervading everywhere, all the time, and remains established in union with him. An exceptional fact for a yogi of meditation, it has been said, he looks on all as one, on the analogy of his own self. For a yogi of discipline of action, it has been said, he identifies his self with the self of all beings. 517. For a yogi of the discipline of knowledge, it has been said, he is devoted to the welfare of all. 525,1214. But in the discipline of devotion, a devotee sees the Lord, the universal self, present in all beings. 630, and he worships him through the performance of his own duty. 1846. It means that a striver, following the discipline of action as well as knowledge, should see his own self in all beings, while a striver following the discipline of devotion should see the Lord, his beloved deity, present in all beings. 2. A feeling of brotherhood is an excellent one. But, when self-interest comes in, as in the case of the Kauruvas and Phuvanvas, this feeling of brotherhood changes into enmity. But he who looks on all alike, on the analogy of his own body, cannot have feelings of enmity for anyone. For example, no one gets angry with the teeth or pulls them out if they accidentally happen to bite the tongue or lips. Similarly, an enlightened yogi has no enmity for anyone, he takes joys and sorrows of others as his own. Superior to this feeling is one that God is present in all beings. Thus a devotee sees his favorite Lord everywhere. So, Lord Krishna declares him to be superior to others. He says, he is considered by me to be the best yogi. 647. I consider them to be the best yogis. 12:2. Those devotees are extremely dear to me. 12:20, and so on. Appendix. A common man sees the self in the body. He does not want pain in any organ, does not have aversion to any organ, but regards all the organs as his own equally. Similarly, a devotee beholds God in all beings and tries to alleviate their sufferings and to comfort them equally. He regards the objects, ability and power etc., not as his own but as God's. As the Ganges is worshipped with the water of the Ganges and the sun is worshipped with an earthen lamp, similarly a devotee offers the Lord's things in rendering service to him as having proper dealings with different organs of the body. A common man regards them as the self and tries to alleviate their pain and to comfort them equally. Similarly, according to the saying, as a deity, so the worship, dealings with a brahmana and a pariah, with a sage and a butcher, with a cow and a dog will be different according to the ordinance of the scriptures, but the devotee beholds God in all of them and so he tries to alleviate their sufferings and to comfort them equally without any distinction. As a devotee assumes the identity of God with the soul of all beings, Gita 6:31, similarly he assumes the identity of all bodies with his own body. Therefore he feels happy with the happiness of others and sad with the sadness of others. Manasa, Uttara 38:1. He, like the joys and sorrows of his own body, takes the joys and sorrows of others as his own. To feel sad with the sadness of others means to make efforts to alleviate the sorrows of others, rather than to become the sad seeing them sad. Similarly, in order to be happy himself he has not to alleviate the sorrows of others, but being compassionate he has to make efforts to make others happy. It means that he has not to enjoy happiness himself but he has to feel happy by seeing that the other person has got rid of sorrows and has become happy. There is so much difference between the eyes and the feet that we see with eyes and we walk with feet. The eye is the sense of perception while the foot is the organ of action. In spite of so much difference, there is so much identity that a thorn runs into the foot and the eyes are filled with tears, dust falls into the eyes and the feet totter. It means that we can't separate the body from the world and can't separate the world from the body. Therefore if we take care of own body, similarly we should take care of the world, and if we are indifferent to the world, we should be indifferent to our body. Accept any one of these two, this is honesty. Lord Krishna explained the discipline of meditation, as a means to attain equanimity, from the 10th verse to the 32nd verse. A doubt arises in Arjuna's mind, and he puts it before Lord Krishna, in the next two verses. Arjuna Avaka Arjuna said, O Krishna, this yoga of equanimity has been preached by you but I do not perceive its stability, due to restlessness of mind. 33 Comment Lord Krishna, in the Gospel of Gita, has laid great emphasis on equanimity, in success and failure etc. This equanimity leads a man to salvation. Arjuna was afraid of sins by waging war. So Lord Krishna exhorted him, treating alike pleasure and pain, gain and middle loss, victory and defeat, engage yourself in the battle. Thus you will incur no sin. 238. In this world, people incur so many sins, but we are not held responsible for these, because we are equanimous. Similarly, while performing actions and discharging our duty, if we remain equanimous, those actions do not lead us to bondage. Therefore, Lord Krishna in the beginning of this chapter said, he who discharges his duty, without expecting the fruit of actions, is a sannyasi and a yogi. The result of renouncing the fruit of actions is equanimity. Middle. Lord Krishna described the discipline of meditation, as a means of attaining equanimity, from the 10th to the 32nd verses. Keeping this equanimity in mind, Arjuna puts forth his doubt before Lord Krishna. Here the doubt which Arjuna conveys to Lord Krishna is not about the 32nd verse, but about meditation, because in the 32nd verse there is reference to an enlightened soul who is always equanimous. Therefore, here the word ya, which denotes yoga, equanimity, and ayam, this denotes meditation, detailed from the 10th verse to the 28th verse. Here, Arjuna seems to mean that equanimity can be easily attained by the discipline of action, but it is difficult by the discipline of meditation, owing to restlessness of mind. It means that a striver cannot concentrate his mind on God, so long as the mind is restless, and without concentration of mind, equanimity cannot be attained. In the next verse, Arjuna describes the restless nature of mind, with the help of an illustration. The mind, verily is, 0 Krishna, restless, turbulent, obstinate, powerful. Therefore, I consider it as difficult to control, as the wind. 34 Comment Arjuna addresses the Lord as Krishna, because he has the power of attraction. So, he should attract his mind and concentrate it on him, because it is very difficult for him to control it, as it is unsteady and restless. Besides being restless, it is turbulent, it distracts a striver from the right course. Moreover, It is obstinate and strong. According to Lord Krishna, desire has 5 locals: the senses, mind, intellect, sense objects and self. Hila 340, 334, 259. Actually desire, vests in the embodied self, but it seems to reside in senses, mind and intellect, etc. Unless it is removed from the self, it appears in the senses and mind, etc., from time to time. But, when it is destroyed from the self, it does not appear anywhere. This proves that so long as desire subsists in the self, the mind torments a striver. Therefore, the mind has been called turbulent. Similarly, the senses torment the mind of a striver. So, the mind has been called turbulent, in the 60th verse of the 2nd chapter. It means that when desire appears in the mind and senses, it torments the striver and does not allow him to remain established in the self. Because of the desire inherent in the self, the mind is attracted intensely towards objects, etc., and does not abandon them in any way. So it is called obstinate. This obstinacy of the mind is very strong, and so the mind is called strong. It forcibly distracts a striver from his course and leads him to sensual pleasures. So it has been mentioned in scriptures, mind leads a man to emancipation and bondage. But the mind remains turbulent, obstinate and strong, so long as desire rests in the self. When the striver himself becomes free from desires, objects and senses do not affect him at all, and turbulence, obstinacy and strength of the mind perish. Restlessness of the mind is an obstacle so long as desire resides in the self. But when desire is rooted out, it is not an obstacle in the least. It is mentioned in the scriptures when the feeling of egoism-ness with matter is rooted 776 chapter 6 out, and one realizes God, one's mind perceives God everywhere, viz., one attains by constant trance, natural trance. It is difficult to control this restless, turbulent, strong and obstinate mind. As one cannot catch hold of wind, in same way, mind cannot be controlled easily. It is very difficult to control it. Appendix: the Lord in the 29th verse mentioned the experience of the striver who meditates on the self, while from the 30th to the 32nd verses he mentioned the experience of the striver who meditates on God endowed with attributes and form. In these verses the Lord means that the moral result of the discipline of meditation is to see the self or to see God in all. The Dhyanogi, having the impression, latency, of knowledge, sees the self in all, while the Dhyanogi, having the impression of devotion, sees God in all. To see the self in all is Atmajnana, self-realization, and to see God in all is God-realization. In self-realization there is predominance of discrimination, in God-realization there is predominance of belief and faith, not the predominance of the steadiness of mind. But in Arjuna's mind the impression of the discipline of meditation mentioned from the 10th to the 28th verses was lingered. Therefore he regarded fickleness of the mind as an obstacle to self-realization or to God-realization. He didn't pay attention towards the impression of knowledge or devotion, but he thought of the volatility of mind. Therefore he thought that volatility of mind was the obstacle to self-realization or God-realization. Linker in the next verse, Lord Krishna, by supporting Arjuna's statement, explains the way of controlling the mind. Sri Bhagavanuvaka, the Blessed Lord said, doubtless, O mighty armed, the mind is restless and hard to control, but by practice and by dispassion, son of Kunti, it can be done. 35 Comment: Lord Krishna addresses him as Mahabaho, viz., mighty armed, to tell him that he is brave, so he should maintain patience and courage and not lose heart. Moreover, he supports his statement, that undoubtedly mind is restless and hard to control. Arjuna's mother, Kunti, possessed discrimination and dispassion. She had demanded a boon of adversity from Lord Krishna. Such cases are rare in history. So Lord Krishna wants to remind Arjuna that he is the son of such a dispassionate mother. Being dispassionate, he should concentrate his mind on God. An earnest, regular and persistent attempt to concentrate the mind on God is called practice. This practice should be done with respect and adoration for God by attaching importance to Him. This practice is of two kinds. A striver should concentrate his mind on the target and being indifferent to thoughts that come to mind. 2. A striver should concentrate on his deity, wherever the mind wanders. There are some other ways also of concentrating the mind on God. 0 Preceptor of the world, Grant us adversities, O that what may have a rare vision which may enable us not to be born. Srimad 1:825, 1. A striver should exhale air 2 or 3 times, and then think that he has discarded the world of his mind, and so whatever thoughts will come to mind will be a manifestation of God only. This is Vajudava Sarvam. 2. Recite the name of the Lord, and listen to it. There should not be any tilly lag between the recitation of one name and the next. 3. Recite God's name and count the number through the mind, without using fingers or a rosary of beads to count. 4. Recite 1. Name of the Lord, as Rama, with the voice, and remember another name, as Krishna, within the mind. 5. Chant the name within the mind. 6. Think of a form of the Lord, from top to toe and from toe to top. 7. Think that the Lord is standing before you. Think of his form. Write mentally, on his toes, 5 names, on the lower part of the leg, 3 names, a little above it, 2 names, a little above it, 3 names, below and above the knee, 1 name each, on the thigh, 3 names, on the right-hand side of the waist, 2 names, on the rib, 3 names, on the shoulder, 2 names, on the upper part of the arm, 3 names, above and below the elbow, 2 names in the form of a ring, on the 5 fingers, 5 names, round the throat, 4 names as half of a garland, in the ear, 2 names as an earring, on the right-hand side of the crown, 6 names, by making 3 rings. Thus, by writing 54 names, on the right-hand side and 54 names on the left-hand side, we think of all the limbs of the Lord and count the 108 beads of a rosary. We can do this once or twice a day. Thus, there are different methods of concentrating one's mind on God. A striver can also think of other means himself. This practice of concentration needs dispassion, because the more dispassionate a man is, the easier it will be for him to concentrate his mind on God. If he has no attachment for the world, he will not think of the world. If a thought, because of past influences, comes to his mind, he should become indifferent to it, without having any attachment or aversion. By doing so, the thought perishes. Thus, by practice and dispassion, a mind can be controlled. The methods to develop dispassion: 1. The world is kaleidoscopic, while the self never changes in the least. We cannot live with the world, and the world cannot live with us. Our babyhood, boyhood and youth have passed. Similar is the case with circumstances. By thinking of reality, we can become dispassionate. 2. We should satisfy the just desires of our family and relations, according to our power, ability and resources, without hope of reward. Thus, old attachment is wiped out, and new attachment is not born. 3. We should think that all sins, crimes and pains, are the fruits of attachment, while peace and bliss are the fruits of dispassion. By thinking so, we can develop dispassion. Link in the next verse, Lord Krishna explains, for whom this yoga of meditation is possible, and for whom it is not possible. Yoga is hard to realize by one whose mind is not completely subdued, but it can easily be achieved by him who has controlled his mind and who strives ceaselessly. Such is my conviction. 36. Comment: it is my opinion that yoga is hard to attain for one whose mind is not subdued, because restlessness of mind is not such a great obstacle to attain yoga as is the uncontrolled mind. As a chaste wife controls her mind but she does not concentrate, so too, a striver should control his mind. By controlling the mind, a striver can concentrate on God. Generally, strivers have a tendency to be engaged in spiritual discipline with faith, but they do not make persistent efforts, with the result that their mind and senses are not controlled, and thus yoga is difficult to attain. That is why even ever and everywhere present God is not easily attained. Strivers have no disinclination for pleasures, as they have for the forbidden food, such as meat etc. Eating forbidden food causes degradation, but enjoyment of sense objects with attachment causes much more degradation. In eating meat, strivers have a notion that this is a prohibited item, but while enjoying sense objects, they do not have this thought. Worldly pleasures leave their influence, which continues for ages and which induces them to incur sins. Due to this inclination for pleasures, they are unable to control their mind and senses, and so they find it difficult to attain yoga. Yoga can be attained, by him who has controlled his mind and who strives ceaselessly, viz., one who is regulated in diet and recreation, sleep and wakefulness. Such is my conviction. A striver, who wants to control his mind, should understand that he is a devotee and a striver, not sensual. He is God's, and so he should take refuge in him. He is a seeker after knowledge, and so he should obtain it. He is a servant, and so he has to serve others, without having any desire. Thus, if a striver changes his ego-ness, the mind can easily be and quickly controlled. When mind is purified, it is controlled spontaneously. Attachment of mind for the perishable is its impurity. When the striver has an exclusive aim of God realization, his attachment is renounced, and his mind becomes pure. A striver should always be careful. He should never have a claim on others' things, etc., because by laying such a claim his mind becomes impure. In business, service, or other transactions, he should never adopt foul means. He should never try to take the share of others, but he should give a part of his own share to them. By doing so, his mind is purified. A vital fact in the discipline of meditation, Arjuna said, mind is restless, therefore, I consider it as difficult to control, as the wind. In response to this problem, Lord Krishna offered a solution by saying, it can be controlled by practice and dispassion. Out of these two, for meditation, practice is more significant, Gita 6:26, while in the discipline of knowledge, dispassion is more important. Though dispassion is helpful in the discipline of meditation, yet in this discipline, mind can be controlled, even when attachment persists. According to the philosophy of Patanjali, one's mind can be controlled by practice. If dispassion is the cause of concentration, how can one gain accomplishments, or worldly fruits, by the concentration of mind? How concentration of mind could result in getting occult powers or worldly fruits unless one had a desire for them? If these were obtained as a result of concentration of mind, it proves that concentration can be had with desires subsisting in the mind. But when the aim is to realize God, concentration of the mind and a trance are helpful in God realization. The next stage, after concentration of the mind, is trance. There is a minor deviation from the state of trance also. It means that in that state there lingers affinity for matter. When this affinity breaks off, a striver realizes the self, from where there is no deviation. Lord Krishna, in the Gospel of Gita, did not talk much about the concentration of the mind, because it was not his aim. Concentration of mind, according to him, is only a means to achieve an end, either mundane or spiritual, while attachment for the world is the main obstacle to God realization. Therefore, a striver should renounce his affinity for matter. First, a striver may have attraction for a trance, but when he attains a state of trance, he has no attraction for it. He becomes indifferent to it. As soon as he becomes indifferent to it, he gets established in the self, which is called the attainment of yoga. This yoga, unity, is constant and eternal. Appendix. In fact, in order to attain perfection by the discipline of meditation, restraint of the mind is not so necessary as is its purification. Purification of the mind means not to be attached to the sense objects. He who has purified his mind attains perfection by the discipline of meditation by making efforts. Whatever the Lord said in the 31st verse by the expression in that the main obstacle is not to behold God in all beings and everywhere, and whatever the Lord declared in the 32nd verse by the expression the main obstacle is attachment and aversion. But Arjuna by an error thought the volatility of mind as an obstacle. In fact, volatility of mind is not an obstacle but not to behold God in all beings and everywhere, and attachment aversion are obstacles. So long as attachment and aversion persist, a striver can't behold God in all beings and everywhere, and as long as he does not behold God in all beings and everywhere, viz., he has the assumption of any other entity besides God, the mind can't be totally restrained. When a vritti is restrained, it means that there is existence of the vritti because we accept its existence. That is why we think restraining it. In the self there is no vritti. Therefore if we restrain the vritti, the mind will be restrained for some time, and again there will be relapse, deviation. If we don't assume any other entity besides God, then there is no question of relapse. The reason is that if there is no other entity, there is no question at all of the existence of mind. Even links in the preceding verse, Lord Krishna said, that yoga is hard to attain for one whose mind is not completely subdued and who does not strive ceaselessly. So Arjuna, in the next 2 verses, puts question about the fate of such an imperfect yogi. Arjuna Avaka Arjuna said, "O Krishna, he who, though of faith, is lax in his striving and whose mind deviates from yoga, having failed to attain perfection in it, what end does he meet?" Comment: one is imbued with the faith that yoga leads to perfection, so he performs adoration and meditation, with devotion and faith. But he does not strive ceaselessly, because he has not subdued his passions and controlled his mind. He, thinking of the sensual pleasures due to attachment for them, has not been able to attain the goal of yoga. What happens to such a striver, at the time of death? What fate will the striver meet, whose mind has deviated from yoga, and who has not realized God? It means that he did not incur sin, so he cannot go to hell. He cannot go to heaven either, because he has no desire for heaven. He cannot be reborn, because he performed worship and meditation, with interest and faith. But at the time of death other thought comes to his mind, and so he cannot think of God. What will happen to him? By addressing the Lord as Krishna, Arjuna means to say that he who attracts all creatures is the controller of their destiny. Therefore, he asks him in which direction he will attract him and what fate he will meet with. Appendix: in Karanasapaksa discipline, discipline dependent on instruments, a striver with mind, gets established in the self. Gita 6:18. Therefore by having connection with the mind, his mind deviates and so there is possibility of his falling from yoga. When a striver regards Karana, instruments, as his own, then he practices Karanasapaksa discipline, discipline dependent on instruments. A Dyanagi by regarding the mind, Karana, as his own concentrates it on God. By fixing the mind, he falls from yoga. Therefore the reason for his falling, deviating, from yoga is dependence on instruments. This Karanasapaksada, dependence on instruments, is not required in the 3 disciplines Karmaga, Jnanaga, and Bhakti-yoga. A Dyanagi is reborn because of the deviation of the mind, viz., by falling from his discipline, but a Karmagi or Jnanagi is reborn because of the worldly attachment. In Bhakti-yoga there is dependence on God, so he provides special protection to his devotee. Gita 9122, Gita 1858. O mighty armed, the detuded and fallen in the path of God, without any hold upon the world, does he not perish like a broken cloud, deprived of both God realization and worldly enjoyment? Comment: Arjuna seeks clarification about the fate of a striver who has failed to attain perfection in yoga. He renounces the desire for worldly pleasures, honor and praise etc., and follows a spiritual discipline. But he is not able to realize God, and at the time of death deviates from yoga, viz., does not think of God. Does he not perish like a broken cloud, deprived of both God realization and worldly enjoyments? A split cloud does not descend on earth as rain, is separated from the main body and cannot join the other parts. Thus it is shattered. In similar the fate of a striver who renounces his dependence on the world, but at the same time fails to realize God. Does he meet with damnation? Here, the illustration of a cloud is not quite apt, because a part of a cloud and the main body of clouds and the part to which it was going to rejoin, all the 3 belong to the same class, they are matter. But in the case of a striver, the world is matter, insentient, while he himself and God are sentient. Thus they do not belong to the same category. In this verse, Arjuna means to say that the soul, being a fragment of God, is imperishable. If it has the aim to attain heaven, it might have gone to heaven or hell or the other lower births of beasts and birds, but still would have remained in the world. What is the fate of a striver who has renounced dependence on the world with the aim of attaining God, but could not realize the same, and at the time of death could not think? F God. An exceptional fact here: failing in both does not mean that he has fallen from yoga as well as God realization. A striver cannot have a downfall if he has attained God realization. Here the illustration of a cloud, with a part separated from the main body and not joining the other clouds and is scattered in between the 2, is not very apt, as a striver who has not yet realized God cannot be said to have fallen from God realization. Moreover, once God realization is attained, there is no question of being detached from it. Thus, If a person fails to think of God at the last moment, he may be said to have failed in attaining God, but he cannot be said to have failed in both, i.e., yoga and God realization. Therefore fallen from both here means that he is deprived of both God realization and worldly enjoyments. Arjuna has also dwelt upon the same point, in the 37th verse. Thus a striver can deviate from yoga, only if he has not realized God. After God realization, there is no question of deviation or downfall from yoga. Link in the next verse, Arjuna prays to Lord Krishna to dispel his doubt, expressed in the previous verse. O Krishna, please dispel this doubt of mine completely, for who other than yourself can do so? Comment: the striver having the aim of God realization, becomes free from the sins, and so cannot go to hell. He cannot go to heaven, because he has no such aim. He cannot be reborn as An, because this is also not the aim of his life. He deviates from the path of God realization. Does such a striver not perish like a broken cloud? No one can dispel this doubt completely. This puzzle of the scriptures can be solved by scholars possessing knowledge. A yogi, who has attained this state by practice, can know the solution to a certain extent. But you are omniscient, you know the fate and end of all creatures. So you can dispel this doubt of mine completely, says Arjuna. Appendix: Arjuna believed that Sri Krishna was an incarnation of God. Here he puts the question to him about the Dhyanogi, what fate he meets if his mind deviates from yoga, and also tells him that no one else can dispel this doubt besides him. It is because of his belief that Sri Krishna was God that he, shunning the Lord's Naroyak.I army, well equipped with arms and ammunition consisting of 109,350 foot soldiers, 65,610 horses, 21,870 chariots and 21,870 elephants, welcomed unarmed Lord Krishna on his side. Link in the next verse, Lord Krishna clears the doubt raised by Arjuna. Bhagavan, God, is he who knows about birth and death, good fate and ill fate, knowledge and ignorance of all creatures. Sri Bhagavanuviyaka, the blessed Lord said, O Partha, there is no fall for him, either here or hereafter, for none who works for self-redemption meets with an evil end. 40. Comment: Arjuna is much anxious to know the end of a striver who has failed to attain perfection in yoga. Lord Krishna knows Arjuna's anxiety, and so he removes it. O son of Partha, a striver who deviates from yoga never falls. Gita 6:41-45. It means that he does not go to a state inferior to what he has already attained. His spiritual practice and aim go with him to his next birth, and he will not take birth again and again. Sage Bharata, by renouncing his kingdom, observed penance in seclusion. There, out of pity, he was attached to a young deer, with the result that he had to get birth as a deer. But he did not fall to a state inferior to what he had already attained, even in the life of a deer. In that life also, it remembered its past. Srimad Bhagavata Section V, Chapter 7, 8. Similarly, one who practices yoga, but fails to attain perfection, may get birth even as an animal, but does not fall to a state inferior to what he has already attained, as he retains the spiritual propensities stored up in the previous birth. This draws him towards God. I myself have observed a dog sitting with devotees, listening to religious discourses and moving about, with a group of devotees, who were chanting the Lord's name loudly. Here Tata, a word of endearment, has been used. In the whole Gita, this word has been used only once. It shows Lord Krishna's great affection and grace for Arjuna. The pronouncement of the Lord is a great assurance for all strivers. The doer of good never comes to grief, or one who works for self-redemption never meets with an evil fate. It means that a striver who, without being attached to pleasure and prosperity, and engaged in spiritual discipline to attain God realization, has no fall, because he is his savior. One who is engrossed in the welfare of all creatures, and thinks of God realization, is the most loving to him, because he is his fragment, so he has a real affinity for him. How can he meet with ill fate? Sometimes, it may seem that he had fallen to a state inferior to what he had already attained. But it so happens, because of his pride, the Lord gives him a warning, so that he may be aware of his state and come towards him again with zeal. Lord Krishna disappeared during his drama, pastime, of human life, from the midst of the gopis. At that time, they were very much perturbed and were at their wits' end. Then he reappeared again and said to them, that he had disappeared adoring them. Srimad 10:32-21. Their welfare and memory were lingering in him. When a person is inclined towards him, he is most loving to him because he thinks that after having lost his way for long, however, he has started following the right way. God, like a mother, always promotes the welfare of a devotee. It means that feelings of spirituality once germinated cannot be wiped out, because whatever is done for God becomes real. Gita 17:27, viz., the real never ceases to be. Gita 2:16. Therefore, Lord Krishna says that one who works for self-redemption never meets with an evil destiny, because the impressions of the past always inspire him towards spirituality. Even if one goes to lower births, his nature will be superior to that of other members of his class. Though Arjuna puts the question, what end does a striver, one whose nature has been good, take birth as a harmful poisonous creature such as a snake or a scorpion etc. meet at the time of death? Yet Lord Krishna answers that there is no fall for him, here or hereafter. Now a question arises, why Ajamila and Bilvamalgala were overpowered by prostitutes, and why there was a fall for them? The answer is that people thought that they had a fall, but actually it was not so. After leaving the body, Ajamila was escorted by courtiers of the Lord, and Bilvamalgala became a devotee of God. A devotee, following spiritual discipline, may seem to have been degraded sometimes because of his carelessness, but he never falls to a state inferior to what he has already attained. If he happens to have association with the good or misfortune befalls him, he again starts following the spiritual path speedily. But delay in God's realization is indeed a kind of downfall for him. Bad company etc. are decidedly obstacles for a striver to spiritual progress. So he should always beware of bad company, and should never be overpowered by sensual pleasures and lust etc. Link in the previous verse, Lord Krishna assured Arjuna that there is no fall for a striver, either here or hereafter, and he never meets with an evil destiny. Now, Lord Krishna in the next verse answers the question put by Arjuna in the 37th verse about a striver who has failed to attain perfection in yoga. The fallen yogi having attained to the world of the righteous. If such a person by accident falls into bad company, he does not abandon his virtues as a snake does not abandon the jewel which exists in its head. Manasa 135. And having lived there for countless years, is reborn in the house of the pious and prosperous. 41. Comment. Those people, who make offerings etc., in accordance with the ordinance of scriptures, attain the worlds of the righteous, viz., heaven. It means that the righteous, not the sinners, attain heaven. But strivers who have no desire to reap the fruit of their virtuous actions, attain heaven without much effort, while people who perform oblation, attain heaven by making efforts. Moreover, in heaven also, their subtle passion lingers, because their aim is to enjoy pleasure. Those, who at the time of death, deviate from yoga, attain heaven, but they become indifferent to pleasures, as their aim is not to enjoy pleasure. They have to go to heaven, because of their subtle desire, which is an obstacle to God realization. Heaven is attained, both by those who perform penances and actions with some interested motive, as also, by those whose aim is to realize God, but deviate from yoga. However, there is a vast difference between the two. The former, having enjoyed heavenly pleasures, return to this world of mortals on the exhaustion of their merit, and thus they can stay there for a limited period only, while the latter can stay for an unlimited period, because their aim has been God's realization. Because of having the latent desire they go to heaven, but they cannot be entangled in pleasure there, and their spiritual development is not affected. The reason is, when even a seeker of the yoga transcends the fruit of actions. 644. How can one, who has deviated from yoga, get entangled? The devotee, who has deviated from yoga after enjoying celestial pleasures, ceases to have any taste in them and is reborn in the house of the pure and prosperous, as a result of his sacred and spiritual pursuits. There he, though subject to senses, feels drawn towards God, by force of his prenatal habit. 644. The pious and prosperous are those who earn their livelihood by honest means, who never have a claim on others' things, whose conduct and feelings are pure, who do not attach importance to worldly pleasures, and who regard all their resources as means to attain God, while those who regard themselves as master of riches and lay claim to them, are not indeed pious and prosperous, but are their slaves. Link in the next verse, Lord Krishna of his own accord, describes the destiny of other strivers, who fall from yoga. Or, if he has developed dispassion, he is born in a family of enlightened yogis, but this kind of birth is very difficult to have in this world. 42 Comment: there are two kinds of strivers, with middle. Having subtle desires, and without such desires. The striver, whose aim is to realize God and is interested in spirituality, but his desires have not been wiped out completely, after living for countless years in heaven, is reborn in the house of the pious and prosperous. This type of striver has already been described in the previous verse. In this verse, there is a description of the striver, who is free from desire, has developed dispassion, has only the aim of God realization and practices yoga, but has not attained perfection and deviated from yoga. Such a striver, instead of going to heaven, directly takes birth in a family of enlightened yogis. I have answered your question about a striver who deviates from yoga at the time of death. Now I want to tell you about a dispassionate striver, who has disinclination for the world, and is interested in spiritual perfection, but at the time of death. However, if he deviates from yoga, the dispassionate striver is born in the family of the enlightened yogis, who have realized God and whose intellects are fixed in him. It is mentioned in the scriptures that the beings born in the family of the enlightened yogis must get enlightenment. Mundaka 3:219. Such a birth is very difficult to obtain in this world. In the family of enlightened yogis, strivers get a favorable environment, which draws out the latent yoga element in them, and leads them rapidly towards their goal. An exceptional fact in the verse 8 refers to a striver born in the family of the enlightened yogis, while idraso means that he has got a chance to have company of the enlightened yogis. In the world, there are two kinds of people, binaja and nadaja. Those who are born of ovum and sperm of parents are called binaja, while those who start following the spiritual path by the preaching of great souls are nadaja. Here, he who is born in a family of enlightened yogis after falling from yoga is binaja, while the striver who gets an opportunity to have the company of liberated souls is nadaja. In the scriptures, it is mentioned that it is difficult to obtain human life, but it is even more difficult to have company of great souls. Nradaji has also written in his book Bhakti Sitra that the company of great souls is very difficult, inaccessible and infallible. The reason is that great souls are very rare, and if by God's grace one gets their company, it is difficult to recognize them. But the company of great souls never goes in vain. Link. Middle. In the above verse, Lord Krishna stated that a dispassionate striver takes birth in the family of enlightened yogis. In the next verse, he explains what happens to him after his birth. There he regains knowledge of the previous birth, and he strives more than ever before for perfection. Zero joy of the Kuras. 43 Comment: the term tatra, there, has been used to describe the condition of the dispassionate striver after his birth in the family of the enlightened souls acquired in the former body. And buddhizarniyagam, spiritual discernment, phrases mean that the dispassionate striver does not go to heaven, but is born in a family of enlightened yogis, where he regains knowledge of the previous birth, and is naturally drawn towards God, because of the impressions and latencies of the previous birth, and continues to practice yoga. A traveler, while traveling on foot, feels tired, and sleeps on one side of a footpath. But, when he awakes, he has not to cover the distance, which he has already covered. Similarly, a striver regains the knowledge of the previous birth. He is like a student, who goes through old lessons and grasps these immediately. Thus, favorable impressions of the previous birth are aroused in him. In favorable surroundings, a striver tries harder than before for perfection. If we interpret that both kinds of strivers, who deviate from yoga, go to heaven, and out of them, the one who has desire for pleasure is born in the house of pious and prosperous, while the other who has no lust is born in a family of enlightened yogis, will it make any difference? Yes, it will. We cannot call the striver Purvadahika of the former body, if he is reborn after going to heaven, because the duration of his stay in heaven will come in between the two births. Moreover, in heaven he cannot have union with knowledge, because there is abundance of pleasure in heaven. There is one more point, which needs attention. A striver having lust goes to heaven. But why should a striver who is free from passion and lust go to heaven? It is a kind of punishment to send such a striver to heaven, which is fully unjustified. Appendix: the spiritual progress pertains to the self and the mundane progress pertains to the non-self. Therefore the worldly wealth gets destroyed, but the spiritual wealth is destroyed even by falling, deviating from yoga. The spiritual progress can be veiled but cannot be destroyed and is revealed at times. The impressions of the spiritual practice of the previous life that are settled, left, in a striver's intellect, have been called here Buddhism yoga. Link: in the previous verse, Lord Krishna explained that a striver who is born in a family of enlightened yogis regains knowledge of the previous birth and strives more than before for perfection. Now he describes the striver who deviates from yoga and is born in the house of the pious and prosperous. One who takes birth in the house of the prosperous, though subject to the senses, is drawn towards God because of the former practice, as even seeker of the yoga of equanimity also transcends the fruit of Vedic rituals performed with some motive. 44. Comment: the striver, who is born in the house of the pious and prosperous, does not get such a favorable environment and company as the one who is born in the house of enlightened yogis, yet because of sacred and spiritual propensity stored up in the previous birth, he is drawn towards God, in spite of his attachment to pleasures. Ovasapi means that though he has lived in heaven for countless years and enjoyed pleasure there, and in the house of the prosperous also, there are pleasures in abundance, he is overpowered by his senses. In spite of all this, he is drawn towards God, by force of the practice of the previous births. The reason is, that the passion for pleasure is unreal, while the influence of the spiritual life is real. So the real influence draws the striver, who deviates from yoga, towards God. In this verse, Lord Krishna explains the importance of a seeker of yoga, in order to describe the importance of the yogi. When the seeker of yoga transcends actions and their fruits as laid down in the Vedas, how can he, having a firm determination for God realization, have a fall? He will surely attain salvation or God realization. The seeker of yoga is he who attaches more importance to yoga than pleasures and prosperity, but his desire for pleasures and prosperity has not been wiped out. He has not attained perfection to yoga, and is a seeker of yoga. Even such a seeker transcends the actions and their fruits. Then the striver who has deviated from yoga is far superior to the seeker. The same fact has been explained by Lord Krishna in the 40th verse of the 2nd chapter when he declares, "In this path of yoga, equanimity, there is no loss of effort, and even a little practice of this discipline protects one from great fear of birth and death, viz., leads him to salvation." Thus the one who practices yoga cannot have a fall. He will undoubtedly attain perfection or salvation. An exceptional fact, such strivers who practice yoga but deviate from it are very rare. Among thousands of people scarcely one strives for perfection. Gita 7:3. And it is he who deviates from yoga. There is great glory of such strivers. Even the seeker of the yoga transcends the fruits of actions, viz., he develops disinclination even for the highest level of celestial existence, the Brahma Loka, the abode of Brahms, because all the worlds including that of Brahma involve return and rebirth, while he does not want rebirth. When there is so much glory of the seeker of yoga, how far superior should a striver who practices yoga be? The reason is that his aim has been to attain yoga, equanimity, though at the time of death he has deviated from yoga. Therefore, if a striver has an exclusive aim to attain God's realization, he will transcend the fruits of actions performed with some motive as laid down in the Vedas. 2. Even if a striver fails to attain equanimity, he should have it as his aim. As Dalasita Saji has said in the Ramakairoda Manasa about himself, that he is a man of the meaner sort, but his ambition is very high. He wants to get nectar though even buttermilk is not available to him. 118.4. It means that the striver should have a lofty aim, and he should have a keen desire to achieve that aim. It is God's nature that he does not mind the error of action of the striver, but he notices what he wants, feels, aims, and remembers hundreds of times what he has in his heart and is pleased with it. 2912.3. A blind saint went to a temple to behold the Lord. One day a person asked him why he had gone to the temple when he was unable to see the Lord. The saint replied, It is true that I am unable to see him. But is he also unable to see me? My purpose is served when he beholds me. Similarly, we may not attain equanimity, but we should have an aim to attain it. By doing so our purpose will be served, because God is omniscient and he knows what the striver has in his heart. Appendix: the worldly virtues, such as feeding poor etc., with desire for fruit, are virtues contrary to sins, but the divine virtues inculcated through association with God are extraordinary. Therefore the worldly virtues do not draw a man towards God, but the virtues pertaining to God draw man towards God. These virtues are not dissipated by bearing fruit. Gita 2:40. Renunciation of worldly desires and inclination towards God. These two are virtues pertaining to God. This expression means that though in the present life the striver does not get an opportunity of good company and good discussion pertaining to God, yet because of the past latencies he is drawn towards God. In this past practice there is no action, pravritti, but there is automatic progress. Gati. In Jijvaya Sarapi Yogastu Sabda Brahmativartate also there is no practice of action, but there is progress as Gati. It means that in this practice there is no effort and there is no doership. In order to know the distinction between pravritti and Gati, vide appendix to the 6th verse of the 15th chapter, 645. But there is Gati, automatic elevation. In Gati there is the power of attracting a striver towards God. An endeavor for spiritual gain is an action, while Gati automatically goes on, due to past latencies. Link. Now Lord Krishna in the next verse describes the condition of the striver who, having deviated from yoga and taken birth in the house of the pious and prosperous, is drawn towards God. A yogi who strives painstakingly, and purified from sins and perfected through more than one birth, reaches the supreme state. 45. Common to dispassionate striver who deviates from yoga by taking birth in the family of enlightened yogis and striving more than before attains perfection or God realization. But how the striver taking birth in the house of the pious and prosperous realizes God, is elucidated in this verse. 2. It means when the seeker of the yoga of equanimity transcends the fruit of actions performed with some motive as laid down in the Vedas. Why the yogi who strives with assiduity should not transcend the fruit of actions and attain perfection. He will attain the supreme goal without doubt. Yogi is he who wants to attain equanimity or God realization and who does not get entangled in the pairs of opposites such as attachment and aversion, pleasures and pain etc. It means that he very assiduously and promptly strives for perfection and his spirituality progresses steadily. He remains constantly conscious that he has to follow this path. The striver deviating from yoga takes birth in the house of the pious and prosperous and is drawn on one side towards God by force of the former practice, while on the other side towards the world because of the worldly temptation. If he by diligent efforts and manly behavior renounces worldly pleasures, he will realize God. The reason is that when even a seeker of yoga transcends the fruit of action, why will a yogi who strives with assiduity not realize God? As a person engaged in forbidden action after getting a shock, deviates from it and strives more for God realization, a striver by taking birth in the house of the pious and prosperous strives hard for God realization. By striving for God realization, he is purged of all sins, viz., his desire for pleasures, prosperity, praise and honor etc., is completely wiped out. His diligent efforts reveal that he is purged of all sins. Spirituality has enhanced in him through successive births. He has been purified from sins in the human birth by practicing yoga, in the second birth in heaven by having disinclination for pleasures, and in the third birth in the house of the pious and prosperous by striving assiduously for God realization. Thus he is purified from sins through many births. Here many births denote these three births. Anekajanma, many births, means more than one birth. Similarly, a dispassionate striver who has deviated from yoga is purged of sins first by being dispassionate and secondly by striving promptly for God realization by getting birth in the family of the yogi. Thus these two births are many births for him. Therefore, he reaches the supreme state. It means that he attains the supreme bliss, by gaining which he does not reckon any other gain greater than that, and wherein established he is not moved even by the heaviest affliction, Gyro 622. A vitae fact. In fact, every human being has passed through many births already. Therefore he has been called Anekajanma Saralsada. In heaven he enjoyed the fruit of his virtuous actions. And thus was purged of virtues. In hells by suffering tortures he was purged of sins. Similarly, in the 84 lakh forms of lives by getting the fruit of his sinful actions he was purged of sins. Thus by being purified from virtues and sins he has perfected himself. Secondly, a human being by striving assiduously can attain the supreme state or supreme goal because the Lord by his grace has bestowed upon him this human birth, the very last of all births, so that he may attain the supreme bliss. Therefore, every person should strive assiduously to attain perfection or the supreme bliss. Link in the next verse. Lord Krishna describes glory of yoga. The yogi is superior to ascetics, not devoid of desires. Superior. A man becomes impure by misusing this human life meant for salvation by doing sins and injustice. In heaven, hell and other births he is only purified. 2. Men of learning, sastras, and also superior to the ritualists. Therefore, Arjuna, do be a yogi. 46. Comment. An ascetic is one who bears hardships voluntarily, in order to obtain power and enjoyment, here and hereafter. A yogi is deemed superior to such ascetics, because he through desirelessness, attains the supreme goal. Jnani, men of learning, in this context are those, who possess knowledge of scriptures, such as the knowledge of the disciplines of knowledge, action and devotion etc., and deliver discourses, but whose aim is to enjoy pleasure and prosperity. A yogi is superior to such men of learning. A yogi is superior to those ritualists, who perform elaborate rituals, such as sacrifice, charity, and pilgrimage etc., in order to obtain pleasure and prosperity etc., here and hereafter, because the yogi's aim is to realize God, while the ritualists has a desire for worldly enjoyments etc. Thus a yogi is superior to ascetics, also men of learning and ritualists, because his aim is to attain God realization, while others' aim is to enjoy worldly pleasure and prosperity etc. Ascetics, men of learning and ritualists, all the three, are engaged in activities. Forbearance in ascetics, learning in Phayanis, and rituals, in ritualists are special characteristics of the three. All the three, having selfish interests, are not yogis but bojas, sensuous. If they had been selfless yogis, God would have neither compared them with a yogi, nor would he have declared a yogi superior to them. Therefore, Arjuna, be a yogi free from attachment and aversion, viz., remain detached just like a lotus leaf which, though constantly in touch with water, does not permit being wetted with it. The same fact has been explained by Lord Krishna when he declares, be established in yoga. 0 Arjuna, Gita 8:27. In the beginning of the 5th chapter, Arjuna asked Lord Krishna, which of the two, renunciation of action, Sankhyoga, or performance of action, Karmayoga, is better? In response to his question, Lord Krishna explained Sankhyoga, the discipline of knowledge, Karmayoga, the discipline of action, and Dhyanayoga, the discipline of meditation. But he, before this verse, did not advise him to be a yogi. It is only here that he directs him to be a yogi, because it is decidedly good for him. Appendix. There are two different spheres, one for bojas, voluptuary, and the other for yogis. A bogai is not a yogi and a yogi is not a bogai. Those who work with an interested motive are bojas, while those who work in a disinterested manner are yogis. Therefore a yogi, who has no desire for fruit, is superior to ascetics, men of learning and ritualists who have selfish motives. Link in the previous verse, Lord Krishna praised a yogi and ordered Arjuna to be a yogi. But Lord Krishna did not explain which yogi as of action or knowledge or meditation or devotion he should be. Therefore, Lord Krishna, in the next verse, orders him to be a yogi of devotion. Of all yogis, he who devoutly worships me, with his mind focused on me, is considered by me to be the most superior yogi or the most devout one. 47 Comment. Those yogis, who want to break off their affinity for matter and practice the disciplines of action, knowledge and meditation etc., are superior to ascetics, and ritualists etc. But he who devoutly worships me, is the best of all. He, who has faith online me, and my glory, and existence, worships me, with his mind focused on me. When a striver, accepts the affinity that he is God's and God is his mind gets engrossed in God automatically. As the mind of a girl after her marriage is absorbed in the affairs of the house, of her father-in-law, a devotee's mind gets absorbed in God, without making any effort. His mind, while he performs several duties of his routine, clings to God, automatically. All activities, whether spiritual such as meditation, worship etc., or secular, such as eating, sleeping or pertaining to livelihood, such as farming, business or service etc., of a devotee, who becomes only God's, without having any attachment for the world, are included in adoration. Lord Krishna in the 55th verse of the 11th chapter, explains the traits of a devotee having exclusive devotion to God, who works for the Lord's sake, depends on Him, is devoted to Him, is free from attachment and is without hatred for any being. All strivers, who having disinclination for the world, are inclined towards spirituality, and want to realize God, are devout. Those, who seek refuge in the Lord, who is endowed with attributes, but is formless viz., all-pervading Lord, are more devout. However, those who take refuge in the Lord, who is endowed with attributes, are the most devout. A devotee, who is most devout, will get mastery over all kinds of disciplines, yogas, such as of action, knowledge and devotion etc., because God is the great Lord of all the yogas, disciplines. And when a devotee takes refuge in Him, he becomes the most devout. The most devout devotee never falls from yoga, because his mind never abandons the Lord, and therefore, the Lord also does not abandon him. At the time of death, because of unconsciousness or much pain, if he is unable to think of God, God thinks of him. So how can he fall from yoga? It means that a devotee who wholeheartedly depends on God without depending on anyone else, or even on his efforts, does not fall from yoga. God does not let him down. But he who attaches value to worldly things and relies on his efforts, for him there is possibility to fall from yoga. His fall may be due to his mind's diversion towards the world. A devotee does not fall because at the time of death, he calls the Lord due to his sole dependence on Him. Even if he is unable to think of the Lord thinks of him, because of his exclusive devotion, and thus he, instead of falling from yoga, attains Him. The Lord declares, such a yogi is the most devout yogi. It does not mean that other yogis do not attain yoga. It means that though all the yogis, by breaking off their affinity for the world, become completely free from bondage and sins, and attain the supreme bliss, yet, spiritual love manifests itself in him, who becomes God's, and that love accelerates every moment without any decay, extinction and satiation. It is because of the Lord Dekayers I myself think of the wood-like and stone-like devotee at the time of his death and bestow upon him the supreme state. If a devotee at the time of death, because of phlegm and wind etc., can't think of me, I myself think of him. If I don't do so, no one else can be more ungrateful than I. This manifestation, that the Lord regards such a devotee as the most devout. In the beginning of the 5th chapter, Arjuna asked Lord Krishna, which of the two, the yoga of knowledge or the yoga of action, is better? Lord Krishna replied, the yoga, discipline, of action, is superior to the discipline of knowledge. But he did not tell him which discipline was good for him. After describing these in the 5th chapter, in the beginning of the 6th chapter, he laid emphasis on the glory of the discipline of action. Then he described that equanimity, which is attained by the discipline of action, is also attained by the discipline of meditation, and he explained the discipline of meditation. Then Arjuna said, that unsteadiness of mind is an obstacle to meditation. So Lord Krishna clarified the doubt. After that Arjuna asked, what fate does a striver, whose mind is diverted from yoga at the time of death, meet with? Lord Krishna answered the question and, in the 46th verse while describing the glory of yoga, ordered him to be a yogi. But, Lord Krishna did not clearly mention which yoga in his opinion is superior to others. So, in the 47th verse, he himself declares, he who devoutly worships me, is the best yogi. But, Arjuna is not able to understand his viewpoint, and so he again puts the question, at the beginning of the 12th chapter, who is the better of the two? The devotees, who with their minds constantly fixed on you, adore you, possessed of form and attributes, or those who adore only the imperishable formless Brahma? In response to this question, Lord Krishna says, I consider them to be the best yogis who, endowed with supreme faith, and ever united through love, with me, worship me, with mind centered on me. An exceptional fact the Lord declares that a devotee following the discipline of devotion is the best yogi of all the other yogis, because the man, soul, is a fragment of God, and by accepting his affinity for the world and the body, he is bound. When he breaks off this assumed affinity, he becomes free and happy. Though in this freedom, there is no dependence on things, men and actions etc., yet if he enjoys this freedom by thinking, I am free from pain and desire, he has subtle affinity for the world. This is finiteness, limitedness, in assumed freedom. This state is called state of having become one with the eternal. Gita 1854. This subtle egoism is also wiped out by being established in that state of identity with the eternal, because by having no affinity for matter and its effects, egoism, which is a fragment of matter, comes to an end. It means that yogis of action and knowledge become free from egoism with the passage of time. But the egoism of a yogi of devotion perishes in the very beginning, as he becomes God's. A yogi of devotion possesses the traits of friendliness, compassion etc., for all beings, Gita 12:13, which are rarely found in the yogis of action and knowledge. It means that a devotee, following the discipline of devotion, regards himself as insignificant from the very beginning, and he develops the virtues of politeness, friendliness, compassion and self-satisfaction etc., during the period when he strives, and these virtues attain maturity during the state of perfection. Therefore, subtle egoism of a devotee perishes. So the Lord has called such a devotee the best. The uniqueness of devotion is that it accelerates in the new form. It does neither attenuate, nor perish, nor get satiated. The Lord also longs for such devotion, or love. This desire of the devotee regarding himself inferior to a blade of grass, being more tolerant than a tree, showing respect to others without expecting respect from them, always should chant the name of the Lord. Lord is fulfilled by his devotee. So the Lord has called him superior to others. There is one more point, which needs attention. In the disciplines of action and knowledge, the striver has his own faith or belief, and he makes efforts accordingly, while a devotee without having any independent faith or belief of his own, depends completely on God. He identifies his desire with his desire. He does not worry, even to attain salvation or God realization. The Lord himself provides him with the means for his bodily maintenance and protects what has already been provided to him. Appendix: a man is said to be established in that thing or person where his mind and intellect get fixed. Gita 12:8. Here the expression Ranadgatanatrādmana denotes that his mind is focused on God, and the term Sradhavan denotes that his intellect is fixed on God. Therefore such a devotee, because of his intimate kinship with God, is established in him. Out of all the yogis such as Karmagi, Jnanagi, Dhyanagi, Hathagi, Lagi and Rajagi etc., the devotee of God is the best of all. The same fact about his devotee has also been mentioned in several other references as Tami. Devotion is the most important of all the disciplines for God realization. Not only this, but all the disciplines end in devotion. Karmaga and Jnanaga etc. are means, but supreme love is an end. Devotion is so extensive that it is at the beginning of every discipline and is also at the end. Devotion at the beginning of every discipline consists in the form of attraction towards God, because without attraction no one can engage himself in spiritual practice. At the end of a discipline, devotion is transformed into the form of supreme love, which enhances every moment. Gita 1854. Therefore in Brahmasutra the Dharma in the shape of the devotion for God has been declared as superior to other danas. 3:439. This verse proves that Lord Krishna is the entire being and his devotion is unworldly. In attainment of the supreme love only lies the fulfillment of human life. Thus with the words Om, Tat, Sat, the names of the Lord, in the Upanishad of the Bhagavad Gita, the knowledge of Brahma, the Supreme, the science of self-control yoga, and the dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna, this is the sixth designated discourse. By self-control, viz., control of the mind, the yogi of meditation attains yoga, equanimity. So this chapter is designated yoga of self-control or yoga of the control of mind. Words, letters and avaka, said, in the 6th chapter. 1. In this chapter in Athasasthadyayab there are 3 words, in Arjuna avaka etc., there are 10 words, in verses there are 573 words and there are 13 concluding words. Thus the total number of words is 599. 2. In this chapter in Athasasthadyayab there are 6 letters, in Arjuna avaka etc., there are 33 letters, in verses there are 1504 letters and there are 47 concluding letters. Thus the total number of the letters is middle on it bows and middle 500.90. 3. In this chapter avaka, said, has been used 5 times. Sri Bhagavan avaka thrice and Arjuna avaka twice. Meters used in the 6th chapter out of the 47 verses of this chapter in the first quarter of the first and 26th verses. Bhagana being used there is Bhavapula meter in the FRRST quarter of the 10th, 14th and 25th verses and in the 3rd quarter of the 15th, 27th, 36th and 42nd verses. Nagana being used there is Navapula meter and in the 3rd quarter of the 11th verse, Ragana being used there is Ravipula meter. The remaining 37 verses are possessed of the characteristics of right Pathyavaktriya Anusdup meter. Sri Hari 7th chapter introduction. Lord Krishna, in the 46th verse of the 6th chapter, described the glory of a yogi and in the 47th verse, he declared, of all yogis, he, who devoutly worships me, with his mind focused on me, is considered by me, to be the most devout yogi. When the devotee thinks of God, he gets absorbed in him. Similarly, when something concerning his devotee is discussed, God also becomes enraptured in it. In the same state of mind, also Lord Krishna, full of grace and affection for Arjuna, starts the 7th chapter on his own. The blessed Lord said, listen, 0 Partha, Arjuna, how, with your mind attached to me, and taking refuge in me and practicing yoga, you will, without any doubt, know me fully. 1 comment. He, whose mind is attached to me alone, has not to think of me, but his mind always remains absorbed in me. He is not, in the least, attached to the sensual pleasures of this world or the next world, and remains indifferent to comfort, name, fame and other, earthly or heavenly acquisitions. There are 2 means, by which mind may be attached to him. I, a striver, who from his heart depending only on God, adores him, his mind, by his grace is attached to him. As a servant, in his master's house, even without doing any work as the master did not allot any work for him on a day gets payment, a devotee with the only aim to attach his mind to him by depending upon him, gets success in attaching his mind to him, by his grace. 2. God pervades everywhere, at all times and in all things, men and creatures etc. and he belongs to all. So a devotee thinks, that he is here, he is present at the time, he is in him, and belongs to him also. By believing so, if he chants his name, his mind gets attached to him very easily. During spiritual practice, he takes refuge in me alone viz, and depends on me, alone. It is in the nature of man, that he depends on someone, or the other. Being a fragment of God, he actually seeks God. But he, without knowing his true affinity for God, accepts his affinity for the body and the world. All the worldly things, including body, are perishable and so they cannot satisfy him, while God is eternal, gracious and omnipotent. So he, by accepting his affinity for him, should depend on him only, and be subject to his will, because he creates even unfavorable circumstances, for his welfare. Mind in God gets absorbed through love. Love develops through affinity. Dependence is sought upon the greatest and the most powerful. God is omnipotent. Therefore, a striver should rely on him only, and remain happy in his dispensation. He needs nothing, such as an individual, an object or any circumstance. Dependence on God, in this way is Madhusraya. A striver by accepting his true affinity for God, remaining equanimous in success and failure, adores him. His performance of different activities either spiritual or mundane, is practice of yoga. It means that he, depending on God with his mind attached to him, accepts his union with him, while discharging his duty. All his activities are according to his will. He does not act in such a way, that he may suffer disunion from him. He, whose mind is attached to the Lord, who depends on him and who has accepted his true affinity for him, knows him in full, without any doubt, viz., he knows that the Lord manifests himself in the form of Lord Shiva, Ganesha, Surya, the sun, and Vishnu. He is known both with form and attributes and without any form and attribute. He is also in the form of incarnations. A jnanaja can know him and realize him. But a devotee can know him in full, and have his vision in the form of his favorite deity. The Lord does not stop thinking of the devotion of his devotees. By the term yada, Lord Krishna says that he will tell him how to know him, and by the word taft, he means that he will tell him that which he wants to know. In these words, Lord Krishna, by using the second person for Arjuna, asks him to listen to him, how he will know him in full. In the 47th verse of the 6th chapter, in the expression "he who worships me endowed with faith, is deemed by me to be the most devout," the Lord, by using he the third person, makes a general statement, while here in the expression "here how you shall know me" he uses the second person pointedly. The term yada has been used to describe how to know him from the gross to the subtle, as water is subtler than earth, fire is subtler than water, and air is subtler than fire, etc. It has been described from the 4th to the 7th verses of this chapter. That means that God is the seed of the world. It has been described from the 8th to the 12th verses of this chapter. To address Arjuna, how he will know him fully. In the first 6 chapters, the word samagram, in full, has not been used for the Lord. So, this term signifies different forms of the Lord, as well as his glory and other divine traits, while this term, in the 23rd verse of the 4th chapter, the expression "he who works for the sake of sacrifice, the whole action, is dissolved." The term whole has been used for totality of actions. An exceptional fact, Lord Krishna, means that a devotee will know him in full if he, instead of having attachment for pleasures, is attached to him. If he, instead of depending on body, family and prosperity, depends on him, and if he has no desire of his own. 2. Real affinity for God is called yogarn, and assumption, acceptance, of that affinity incessantly, is called yurjan. It means that a striver, instead of assuming his affinity for body, mind and senses, etc., should realize his real affinity for God. In fact, practice of yoga is not so important as renunciation of attachment for and dependence on the world. By doing so, meditation upon God will be practiced automatically, and all actions will be performed without any desire for their fruit. In such a case, he will not have to practice yoga. It means that he who attaches importance to the perishable worldly things and persons, etc., cannot know the all-pervading God. If a man has links with a great man of the society, he feels exalted. Similarly, when our intimacy is aroused with God, who is our disinterested friend and well-wisher and whose fragment we are, how much more exalted we must feel. In that case, unique and supreme love is aroused, and the striver's mind gets attached to him and he depends on him, quite spontaneously. Synonyms of saranagati, surrender, araya, avalambana, adinata, prapati and sahara, are synonyms of the term surrender, refuge, yet they have different meanings. 1. Asraya, we cannot live without the support of earth. In the same way, we cannot live without the support of God. This is called Asraya. 2. Avalambana, if man's emi is broken, it is dressed and slung from the neck with a band, thus the arm is supported with a sling, while hanging from the neck. In like manner, a helpless person seeks refuge in God. This support is called avalambana. 3. Adinata, it is of two kinds. A. Someone may force us to depend upon him. B. We ourselves may willingly depend on some other. Similarly, a devotee with exclusive devotion and without any selfish motive, becomes an attendant upon God, by regarding him as his master. This service with exclusive devotion is called adinata. 4. Prapati, when a devotee, like a helpless person, offers obeisance before a great man, prostrates before God, it is called prapati. 5. Sahara, when a devotee, in order to be liberated from the cycle of birth and death, takes refuge in God, like a drowning man who catches at a straw, it is called sahara. A devotee is said to take refuge in God when he is attached only to God and depends only on him, i.e., when fixes his mind and intellect only on God. When a man himself takes refuge in God, with his mind and intellect, he possesses all the virtues of a surrendered devotee. When a striver resolves that his so-called mind and intellect are God's, his mind is naturally attached to him, and he depends only on him, i.e., he becomes Mayasaktamna and Madhusraya. In fact, all the worldly things are in the process of decay every moment, and we being eternal, have no real affinity with them. So, if we renounce this assumed affinity, ran only, aim at salvation, we shall take refuge in him automatically, because we are God's, despite ever having developed this inclination for him, due to our inclination for the world. As soon this assumed affinity or inclination are renounced, our after inclination for God will manifest itself, and that is axiomatic. Appendix: the devotee, whose mind has been naturally attracted towards God, who has taken refuge in God and who has accepted his axiomatic eternal union, intimate relationship, with God, knows God in full. All is God. This is the integral, entire, form of God. In the term Mayasaktamna there is predominance of love, devotion, and in Madhusraya there is predominance of faith, belief. Samagram mam. In this expression the term samagram is adjective and the term mam, God, is the noun qualified. A devotee's affinity instead of being with adjective is with the noun qualified, i.e., with God. In the expression Sradhavan Bhajat Yo Mam used at the end of the 6th chapter, what is the form of Mam? The Lord answers the questions here. Of Mam is my entire form. I shall describe my full form in such a manner, using such a device, in such a style that you will easily know my real form. Arjuna in the preceding chapter expressed his doubt. Titam Samsyam Krishna 639. Therefore the Lord here declares that he will unfold to him the fact by which he will have no doubt. Link in the first verse, Lord Krishna asked Arjuna to listen to how he would know him in full. Now in the next verse, he promises to tell him about it. I shall unfold to you, in full, this knowledge, jnana, along with secrets of manifest divinity, having known which nothing more remains to be known. To comment, Lord Krishna declares, O Arjuna, I myself shall teach you in full, this jnana, knowledge, and vijnana, real knowledge of manifest divinity. No one else can describe me in full, because their knowledge about me is limited, so they cannot know myself in full, as my knowledge is limitless and imperishable, being ever omniscient. After knowing it, nothing else remains to be known. In the 16th verse of the 10th chapter, Arjuna says to Lord Krishna, you alone can describe in full your divine glories. 10:16. So Lord Krishna, in response to his curiosity, says, I shall tell you of my important divine glories, because there is no end to my manifestations. 10:19. At the end of this chapter again, he declares, there is no end of my divine glories. 10:40. Here, in 712, he declares, I shall unfold to you the true essence of real knowledge, realization, and having here the adjective vijnana qualifies the noun jnana and so is superior to jnana. Here the belief at the world is born of the Lord and again merges in him as knowledge, wisdom, jnana, while the realization, that in the world there is nothing else except the manifestation of God, is the real knowledge, vijnana. A man cannot describe his own experience in full because the thoughts and feelings cannot be clearly expressed in words. When a man cannot express his own experience in words, how can he teach and unfold the knowledge, wisdom, along with real knowledge like the Lord? Known which, nothing else remains to be known. It means that God's glories, manifestations and powers etc., are endless. In the Ramakaya Manasa also it has been declared, the form of the Lord without attribute, is easy to know while the form endowed with attributes, is too difficult to understand. His manifestations are so varied, that even ascetics FMD themselves, at their wits' end. It means that there is no end to the glories of the Lord, endowed with attributes. So, how could a man know him? By using his mind. But a man can know the divine essence, which is all-pervading. As in different ornaments, made of gold, there is nothing but gold. Similarly, in the whole universe, there is nothing else, except divine manifestation. A man can know of gold without knowing about different ornaments. Similarly, a striver can know that God pervades everywhere, in all creatures and things etc., even though he may not know the names of different creatures and things etc., which form parts of his divine glories. By knowing the reality about God, nothing else remains to be known, in the same way, as thirst is quenched, after drinking water. In the second verse of the 10th chapter, the Lord declared, "Neither gods nor great sages know the secret of my birth." In the third verse, he declares, "He who knows me, as unborn and without beginning, among men, is undiluted and purged of all sins." Now, a question arises, how a man can know him, when even gods and great sages do not know him? The answer is, that if a striver accepts him as unborn and without beginning, with a fin faith, it means that he knows him, because it is within the power of man only to accept him as unborn and without beginning. As a child cannot see a marriage procession of its parents, so too gods, sages, liberated souls etc., cannot know of incarnations, godly sports and divine glories, of the Lord, because he is limitless and unfathomable. But a devotee can know him in essence. In order to know the Lord in reality, in the discipline of knowledge, there is preeminence of knowledge, while in the discipline of devotion, there is preeminence of assumption, or acceptance. If reality is accepted firmly, it cannot be given up, because it is real. When no one can force a man to renounce, even a false assumption, how can an assumption of real affinity for God be renounced? This assumption is in no way less significant than knowledge. It is as effective as knowledge. In the discipline of devotion, there is preeminence of acceptance. In the first verse of the 10th chapter, Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, "Zero mighty armed, listen to my supreme word, which I speak to you, out of a desire to do you good." Here, listen means accept. Importance is attached to acceptance, because it is the context of devotion. In the discipline of knowledge, importance is attached to knowledge. In the first verse of the 14th chapter, Lord Krishna declares, "I impart to you the supreme knowledge, the best of all forms of knowledge, acquiring which all sages have attained the highest perfection." In the discipline of devotion, a striver knows him by accepting his existence, while in the discipline of knowledge, a man accepts him by knowing him. In perfection, both of them are identified. An exceptional fact pertaining to knowledge, wisdom, and real knowledge of manifest divinity: the world is born of the Lord and it merges into him. Therefore, he is the root of the world. This belief, acceptance, is knowledge. There is nothing in the world except God, viz., the world is nothing except manifest divinity. This realization is real knowledge, Vijnana. Lord Krishna, in 746, declares, "My nature is of two kinds, lower and higher, and I am the origin of the whole universe." By this declaration, Lord Krishna referred to knowledge, jnana. There is nothing else besides me. Like clusters of yarn beads, formed by knots on a thread, all this is threaded on me on. By this declaration Lord Krishna explains what real knowledge, Vijnana, is. I am the sapidity in water, the light in the moon and the sun, the eternal seed of all beings. Whatever other entities there are, born of sattva, the mode of goodness, of rajasa, the principle of activity, the mode of passion, and of tamasa, the principle of inertia, the mode of ignorance, know these all, as evolved from me, alone. 7:8-12. By this declaration, he explains the essence of knowledge. In reality neither one exists in them nor they in me, viz., I manifest myself in all forms, because none have their free existence. 7:12. By this declaration, he explains realization, Vijnana. The whole of this creation is deluded by objects, evolved from the three modes of nature, prakriti. But those who are not deluded by the modes of nature and accept that these are born of me and are absorbed in me, by accepting so, they take refuge in me alone, and cross the divine illusion of mine. Such devotees are of four types: a seeker of worldly objects, a sufferer, the seeker of knowledge, and a man of wisdom. All these are noble, but the man of wisdom is extremely dear to me, and he is my own self. 7:13-18. By this declaration, he explains of knowledge, the man of realization, who realizes that all is God, is very rare. 7:19. By this declaration he explains realization, Vijnana. Those who, being motivated by desires worship gods, gain perishable fruit, while those who are my devotees, attain me. I am not manifest to those who do not know me, as the unborn and imperishable Supreme Spirit. One knows the beings of the past, the present and the future, but no one knows me. Those who are subject to illusion, by the delusion of pairs of opposites, follow a cycle of birth and death. But the sins of those who worship me with a firm resolve come to an end, and they become free from the pairs of opposites. 7:20-28. By this declaration also, he explains knowledge, jnana. Those who take refuge in me, know Brahma, the infinite, Adhyatma, embodied souls, karma, action, adibhuta, matter, adideva, Brahma, and adayajna, the unmanifest divinity, viz., they realize that I manifest myself, in all the movable, as well as the immovable. 7:29-30. By this declaration he explains realization, vijnana. After knowing this wisdom, and with realization, nothing remains to be known. It means that there is nothing else besides me, Gita 717, and that all is God. 7:19. After knowing this reality, nothing else remains to be known. On the other hand, if a striver possesses all knowledge about the world, without knowing me, all his efforts are in vain, they bear no fruit. Whatever a striver knows with his senses, mind and intellect, is not true knowledge about God, because these all belong to matter and matter cannot know reality, which is beyond matter. When one takes refuge in him, he knows him naturally, without making any effort, because he can be known by the self, rather than with mind and intellect, etc. Appendix: the Paraprakriti, higher nature, and the Aparaprakriti, lower nature, have no independent existence. This is jnana, knowledge, and the higher and the lower nature all is God. This is vijnana. Therefore all including ego is only God. This is jnana with vijnana, which must be known and which can be known as called jnatavya. Having known jnana with vijnana, viz., the entire form of God, nothing remains to be known, viz., he who wants to know the pure reality, nothing remains to be known to him. The reason is that when there is nothing else besides God, 7th verse of this chapter, then what more will remain to be known? Someone may raise a question that the Lord declares that he will tell jnana with vijnana. It means that the primary importance goes to jnana while vijnana is of secondary importance. But actually it is not so. Only jnana can lead to salvation, but endless bliss of love is attained only when it is accompanied by vijnana. Jnana is like money, and vijnana is the feeling of attraction. Money does not provide the pleasure which attraction for money provides. Similarly, the bliss that is attained by vijnana, devotion, is not attained by jnana, knowledge. In jnana there is constant relish, but in vijnana there is such a relish which goes on increasing every moment. Therefore while declaring jnana with vijnana, the Lord specially aims at vijnana, and he wants to explain that it is superior to jnana because vijnana stands for the Lord's entire form. Link in the 2nd verse, Lord Krishna said, I shall unfold to you this knowledge with realization, having known which nothing remains to be known. How is it that men do not know the reality about God, when nothing else remains to be known? In the next verse, Lord Krishna answers the question. Among thousands of men, hardly one strives for perfection, and of those who do, scarcely one knows me in essence. 3. Comment among: if a word I used as an adjective of number, its number is singular. But in the 6th inflection it has not only the singular number but all the 3 numbers. Here in the word manusianim there is 6th inflection in connection with the thousands of men. Scarcely one strives for perfection. It means that only those persons who do not indulge in the sensuous pleasures like eating, drinking and enjoying themselves like animals, are human beings, in the true sense of the term. Out of those, men who follow virtues and righteousness, are only in thousands. Out of those thousands, hardly one strives for divine perfection or divine bliss, having gained which, one thinks that there is no greater gain beyond it, and there is not the least sorrow. Persons, who have no desire to go to heaven, and to enjoy worldly pleasures, respect and praise etc., even when they get an opportunity and have an inclination to them, but because of past impressions who do not deviate from their principles and aims, and want to attain divine perfection, are rare. Pleasure and prosperity are obstacles to spiritual progress. Worldly pleasures seem pleasant only in the beginning. If strivers think over the result of pleasure and prosperity, that these are gateways to hell's and 84 lakh forms of lives, they will start taking to spiritual practice. Most of the people hanker after worldly pleasure and prosperity. Some people, who transcend worldly pleasures, run after heavenly pleasures. But there are only a few aspirants, who strive for divine perfection or God realization. If we turn over the pages of history, such aspirants are very rare. Most of them are those who have performed actions and penances etc., in order to reap fruits. Number. And there is seventh inflection in the plural number in the word susrani. Therefore, the expression manusyanimsa asresukasadi siddhe means manusyanimsa asrani bhagavati rusam krivantisa asresukasit siddhe yatati i.e., thousands of men have an inclination to God, but one of those thousands of men strives to attain perfection. Divine perfection does not mean worldly and heavenly enjoyments and accomplishments such as anima, maharna and garama etc., because they lead to a downfall and to the cycle of birth and death. 9121. Therefore, here perfection means God realization. In fact, it is not difficult to attain God realization, but there are only a few aspirants who strive sincerely from their heart to realize Him. Now, a question arises: why do not strivers strive for God realization? The answer is that there are two stumbling blocks: see attraction of sensual pleasures and hope to realize Him. Infutile. Here, Siddha, the successful one, is the striver whose mind has been purified, and whose only aim is to realize God. Though, in 719, the man of realization who realizes that all is God, is called a great soul, yet in this context, great souls are those strivers, who possess divine nature, worship the Lord constantly, with exclusive devotion, Gita 9113, and strive to realize Him. Here, yadita means that strivers want to realize God from their heart and so strive for divine perfection, and naturally think of Him with reverence. Scarcely one knows me in reality. Here it does not mean that the strivers who strive to know Him cannot know Him. But, at present, any one striver out of the assiduous strivers knows Him in reality. Out of those who know Him, scarcely anyone can speak of Him and explain to others. Other learned persons may be there who may have God always pervades everywhere, all persons, things, incidents, circumstances and actions etc. Therefore, God realization need not be left for the future. He is now, here, in everyone and everyone's. Moreover, He is superior to all the persons etc. By having this belief, mind will be attracted towards Him automatically, and a burning desire to realize Him immediately will be aroused. Here the striver has been called Siddha, successful one, according to because he will attain perfection in the same way as a sari will be prepared of the sutra thread. If a striver depending on God, having exclusive devotion for Him, adores Him in order to realize Him, he will attain perfection. There is no doubt about it. As far as a sari is concerned, it may be prepared out of the thread, or even any other cloth may be prepared out of the thread, or the thread may be destroyed. But the devotee who adores God with exclusive devotion will certainly attain perfection. Knowledge, but they cannot explain to others. The Lord declares, one looks upon Him as a marvel, another likewise speaks of Him as a marvel. Gita 2:29. Generally people give illustrations about this verse in order to explain that it is very difficult to attain divine perfection. But actually, it is not so. In order to attain divine perfection, it is difficult to have keen desire, and for the fulfillment of that desire, it is not easy to have the company of liberated souls. Here, Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, I shall unfold, teach, to you in full, this knowledge, combined with realization, and you will know it. Such an omniscient speaker, as Lord Krishna Himself, and such an inquisitive striver as Arjuna, are very rare. The fact is, that it is difficult to have keen desire. By having keen desire, a striver has no responsibility of his own. The responsibility is shouldered by the Lord. By using Tatvata, in truth, Lord Krishna means that a striver comes to know the truth, reality, about Him, that he manifests himself in the form of Lord Shiva, Ganesha, Surya, the Sun, Vishnu, by incarnations, and he is possessed of form and attributes, and he is also, without form and attributes, i.e., he knows that there is no existence, in the least, besides the Lord. Appendix: out of all the God-realized souls who have attained perfection after striving, following the disciplines of karma, jnana and dhyana etc., the devotees, who know the entire form of God in reality, in the shape of all is God, are very rare, indeed. 719. Those liberated souls are dissatisfied with their state of liberation, and from within they have a yearning, a hunger to have supreme devotion, infinite bliss. Therefore it is mentioned in the Brahma Sutra, L32, that God, who is an embodiment of love, devotion, is realizable, attainable, even by the liberated souls. The reason is that by attaining salvation, the desire for the perishable relish is wiped out, but the hunger for endless relish is not satisfied. That hunger is aroused by God's grace. It means that those who practice spiritual discipline by having faith and belief in God, who have the latent impression of devotion, God does not let them be satisfied with knowledge, does not let them stay there, and makes the relish of salvation insipid for them. A karmagi, a jnanagi, a dhyanagi, etc., all can attain perfection, salvation, but all of them don't know God in his entire form. Therefore the expression yatatumapi siddhana means that by striving, they have attained perfection with their own method, but they don't know my entire, full, form. The reason is that my entire form can be known by supreme devotion. Gita 1855. Here the term mam stands for God in his entire form. The entire form of God can be known by God's grace, not by thought. Gita 10:11. Arjuna also, after hearing the gospel of the Gita, said to Lord Krishna, "By your grace my delusion is destroyed and memory is gained." Gita 1873. As while feeding the cow licks her calf with fondness, it provides so much nourishment which the calf can't get only by drinking milk. Similarly, the knowledge which is gained by God's grace can't be gained by thought, because while thinking, the entity of the self persists. He who knows only attribute-less God, does not know him in reality, but he who knows both God endowed with attributes and also attribute-less God, entire, knows God in reality. By karmaga, quiet bliss, peace, quietude, is attained because attachment to the world causes disquietude. By karmaga, renunciation of attachment to the world causes peace. Tyagakantiranantram. Gita 12:12. By jnanaga, an unbroken bliss is attained. This unbroken bliss is also called self-bliss because it is the bliss of the self. In self-bliss the self merges into Brahma, absolute, viz., as Brahma is truth, consciousness and bliss solidified. Similarly, self becomes truth, consciousness and bliss solidified. Gita 1412. Though having attained the self-bliss, self-realization, a striver lacks nothing, yet the striver, who has the latent impression of devotion and depends on God's grace, is not satisfied with that self-bliss. Within him there is hunger for endless bliss. Therefore by bhakti yoga, endless bliss is attained. Self-bliss is the bliss of the fragment, soul, but endless bliss is the bliss of the whole, God, Supreme Soul. This is the principle that the pleasure which is caused by the attraction of an object, is not caused by the knowledge of that object. As the pleasure which is derived from the greed for money, is not derived from the mere knowledge of money. By knowing the money we shall know how to make use of it, but there will not be special attraction. Gain more and more money, this attraction will persist by being greedy for money. In fact, there is no pleasure in gaining money, but it seems because of the evil of greed. But God's bliss is because of pure love, and this bliss really exists. The reason is that being a fragment of God, the embodied self has an automatic attraction towards him. This is the principle that a fragment is naturally attracted towards the whole, as a stone being a fragment of the earth when thrown upward naturally is attracted towards the earth. Fire is naturally attracted towards the sun, upward, and rivers naturally flow towards the sea, and so on. He who attains salvation is naturally satisfied, but he who has the impressions of devotion is not satisfied. The reason is that God showers his special grace on such a devotee and does not let him stay there. 7.3. Here a doubt may crop up that the sun does not shine at night. Then why does fire rise upward at night? The clarification is that whether it is day or night, the sun may shine anywhere, but he is always above the earth. Therefore, as the people in India see the sun above the earth, so do the people of America, which is almost in the opposite direction of India, also see the sun above the earth. Why do we need God? If we reflect upon it, we come to know that there is such a necessity which can't be satisfied either by our own self or by the world. In order to alleviate sufferings and to attain supreme peace, there is no necessity for God. The reason is that if desires are totally renounced, our sufferings will end and supreme peace will be attained, viz., we shall attain salvation. We have necessity for God in order to attain supreme love because we are fragments only of God. The man who wants to be liberated from worldly sufferings, who wants to be independent, being free from dependence, attains salvation. But the man, who being tired of the worldly sufferings thinks, if there had been anyone my own who would have given me refuge in himself, who would have embraced me and who would have removed my grief, sin, lack, fear and monotony etc., attains devotion. It means that God is not needed to attain salvation but he is needed to attain devotion. When a man comes to know that in such a vast world, in endless universes, there is nothing mine but only he is mine, in whose one fragment endless universes are situated, then he feels the necessity for God from within. The reason is that only the thing, which ever stays with us and with which we may ever stay, can be ours. Only God can be the entity who may not be separated from us and from whom we may not be separated. Now the question arises, when a man needs God, why is he not attained? The answer is that a man lives comfortably without attaining him. He forgets his necessity. He remains satisfied with objects, ability and power etc., which are available to him. If he realizes the need for God and can be ill at ease, there is no delay in God realization. The reason is, what should be the delay in attaining him who is ever attained? God is not a tree that the seed is sown today and it will bear fruit after years. He is present at all places, all the time, in all things, in all states and in all circumstances the same as he is. We have turned away from him. He has not turned away from us. Link in the second verse, Lord Krishna promised Arjuna to unfold to him knowledge combined with realization. In keeping with his promise, Lord Krishna proceeds, in the next verse, to explain knowledge with realization. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intellect, ego, these constitute my nature, prakriti, eightfold divided. This is my lower, insentient, nature but different from it. Zero mighty armed, is my higher, sentient, nature, the life element, jiva, by which this universe is sustained. 4.5 Comment. God is the origin of the whole creation. Wielding his own nature, he brings forth the whole creation. This nature is called the lower nature, apara-prakriti, while the embodied soul, which is a fragment of God, is called higher. The entity which is kaleidoscopic and never remains the same has been mentioned as perishable, in 1516, lower, insentient, nature, in 7.4, and of 24 categories 5 subtle elements, ether, air, fire, water and earth, ego, intellect, primordial matter, 10 organs, mind and 5 objects of senses, sound, touch, color, taste, smell, in 13.5. Nature, para-prakriti. The lower nature, is inferior, insentient and changeful, while higher nature is superior, sentient and changeless. Every man's nature, is different. As a man's nature, cannot be proved to have its own separate entity, independent of that man, similar is the case with that of God's nature. This nature is God's own disposition, therefore, it is called as his nature. Similarly, the embodied soul, being a portion of God, cannot be proved to have its own separate existence, independent of God, as it is God itself, though God itself, but it is named nature because of its affinity with lower nature, as it accepts the activities of the lower nature as its own, or in other words attributes the doership to himself. Therefore, it is called superior nature, or embodied soul. Otherwise, it is nothing else but God. When it becomes free from the bondage of being a doer and an enjoyer, Gita 18:17, Iris no more higher nature, or embodied soul. Here the lower nature includes earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intellect and ego. If out of these 8, 5 gross elements are supposed to represent the gross creation and the 3, mind, intellect and ego, are to represent the whole subtle creation, then this description of nature remains incomplete, as it leaves out the causal creation. To prove that in this description of nature, all parts of nature have been included, the venerable commentators have interpreted these in the following way. According to them, the 5 gross elements stand for gross as well as their causes, 5 subtle tanmatras. Mind stands for its origin, ego, intellect stands for cosmic intelligence and ego stands for the causal nature. Thus, this interpretation includes full description of cosmic nature, as it includes all the three gross, subtle and causal creation. In scriptures, this cosmic nature has been described as Prakriti and Vikriti. Here, a point needs attention, that Lord Krishna has not described lower and higher nature from the viewpoint of Prakriti and Vilkti or nature cum its evolutes. Had the Lord different so, he would not have called the individual, soul, as higher nature, because the soul is neither Prakriti the cause of any evolute nor the evolute itself. The soul is immutable and changeless. It proves that the Lord has described matter as lower nature, and the individual soul as higher nature, just in order to distinguish the insentient from the sentient. According to this author, this eightfold division of nature includes the gross and subtle creation only. The 5 gross elements enumerated here include the gross creation. These 5 elements also represent subtle creation, as these are evolutes of 5 subtle tanmatras. Mind, intellect and ego, described here, are also part of the subtle creation. The ego has 2 aspects. The ego is matter, in its nature, and it is a modification, or a trait of the inner sense. 3 are arga. It is a sort of an instrument. This is called, in the 4th verse, as ego a part of lower nature. The second aspect of ego is one's own personality, and it represents itself as a doer. This is described, in the 5th verse of this chapter, by the name of higher nature. This ego is the result of the soul's identification with causal body. This identification has 2 aspects, as insentient and sentient. The insentient factor is the causal body, and one who cultivates egoistic notion is sentient factor. Until self-realization, this ego persists assuming itself always as doer. During deep sleep, it lies dormant or is not manifest. After waking up I slept soundly and am awake. A man making this statement represents the ego, the higher nature. After waking up he thinks where and how he is. This is wakefulness of mind, and when he knows that he is at a particular place and time, it is the wakefulness of the intellect. Thus, one who experiences his entity is the ego, representing higher nature, and through the ego, with which he experiences, is a trait of the inner sense, it is lower nature. When soul, the sustainer and illuminator of this lower nature, identifies itself with this nature, it is then called higher nature, or the embodied soul. This fact has been described in Gita by the term by whom this insentient nature is sustained. If this sentient nature, soul or spirit, without having any inclination for the insentient nature, has an inclination for God, i.e., accepts him as its own, it realizes the self, and then its, soul's or man's, attachment for the world turns into love for God. This divine love is limitless, it is in the form of bliss, and it increases every moment. After attaining it, nothing else remains to be attained, and after realizing the self, nothing remains to be known, and after applying all the objects etc. of the lower nature for the service of the world, and having disinclination for them, nothing remains to be done. This is the state of perfection of human life. It seems that this eightfold lower nature is individual, lower nature, because a man is bound because of his affinity for his body. If a man, soul, does not accept his affinity for it, there is no question of any bondage. Man himself, soul or spirit, sustains this universe, viz., accepts his relationship with the universe, and that relationship leads him to bondage. An individual body has no separate entity, different from the universe. When a man, the self, assumes his affinity for the body, he is bound. If he does not assume this affinity, there is no question of bondage. In the 7th verse of the 15th chapter, Lord Krishna, the striver following the discipline of knowledge, will have revelation of love for God in the form of self-realization, while a devotee following the discipline of devotion will have that revelation in the form of divine love. Thus, from this point of view, the striver following the discipline of knowledge and that following the discipline of devotion both become one. Declares, the soul in the body is an eternal fragment of myself, but it attracts the mind and the senses that rest in matter, viz., it accepts the mind and the senses as its own. In the same way, in the 5th verse of the 13th chapter, Lord Krishna describes the universe as etc., field, and, in the 6th verse, describes its evolutes, modifications. But actually these evolutes are found, not in the universe, but in the body. Thus, affinity for the body is the main obstacle to emancipation. This body, being a fragment of the universe, cannot be separated from it. The fact is, that primordial matter is neither a means nor an obstacle to emancipation. When a striver does not accept his affinity for it, it proves helpful. But, when he accepts his affinity for it, it proves an obstacle, because this affinity for prakrti, matter, gives birth to egoism-ness. This egoism is the cause of bondage. By the phrase "I am me," Lord Krishna warns us that this primordial matter or lower nature is his. So a striver should not accept it as his own, otherwise this affinity will lead him to the cycle of birth and death. In egoism-ness, there are two desires: desire for pleasure, as well as desire for knowledge. The desire for pleasure can be wiped out by the discipline of action, while the desire for knowledge can be satisfied by the discipline of knowledge. Thus, a striver who is firmly established in either of the two, gets the fruit of both. Gita 5.4.5, i.e., when the desire for pleasure is wiped out, the desire for knowledge is satisfied. When the desire for knowledge is satisfied, the desire for pleasures is wiped out. When the desire for pleasures is wiped out, or the desire for knowledge is satisfied, there develops detachment automatically. If a striver does not enjoy that detachment, i.e., he is not pleased with that state, he attains self-realization and his human life proves fruitful. Actually, the soul is a fragment of God, but by accepting its affinity for physical, subtle and causal bodies, it has become an embodied soul. It accepts its affinity in order to enjoy mundane pleasures, which lead it to great affliction, in the form of birth and death. O Arjuna, being mighty armed, you are very brave and powerful, and you can understand the difference between the lower nature, matter, and the higher nature, soul. Therefore, understand it. In fact, this universe is a manifestation of God, i.e., all the universe is God. 719, and he is being and non-being both. 9119. The man, soul, has sustained this universe, i.e., the man, soul, by accepting the free existence of this universe, has started using it for his own pleasure, and thus it has led him to bondage. If he takes this universe as a manifestation or revelation of God, he will be free from the shackles of birth and death. The world is transitory and kaleidoscopic, but man thinks it permanent and pleasing, because of his temptation and attachment for pleasure and things. By having feelings of I and mine, it is because of his attachment for pleasure and prosperity that he cannot behold this world as a manifestation of God. As a debauch cannot behold a woman as mother, so can a person having attachment for the worldly pleasure and prosperity not perceive that the Lord himself has manifested himself in the form of the world. This attachment for pleasure sustains the universe, i.e., is the cause of sustaining the universe. Secondly, all human beings are born of sperm and ovum, which themselves are filthy and impure. But a voluptuary thinks the body as charming and beautiful, because of his attachment for pleasure. This thought makes the world. Once a gentleman said to a saint, who was standing on the bank of a river, "Sir, the water of this river and the men." On the in the Gita the term Jagat, universe, denotes higher nature, in 7.13, lower nature, in 7.5, and higher and lower nature both, in 7.6. Bridge are flowing. The saint said, "Zero brother, it is not only the water of the river, or the men that are moving, but the river and the bridge themselves are also moving." It means that all of these are moving towards destruction. One day they will come to an end. Actually, the whole world is perishing every moment. In fact, the soul is neither born nor does it decay. But, by identifying itself with the body, it accepts the body's birth and death as its own. Birth and death. If it does not identify itself with the body nor does it accept its affinity for it, this world will have no existence at all. The term itam means that as both body and the world are one and the same, their difference is not real. It is merely assumed. Therefore, Lord Krishna, in the 13th chapter, says that this body is spoken of as a field, etc. 13.1, but where there is a description of this field, it is a description of the world. 13.5, while the avayuts such as desire, aversion, pleasure and pain etc., have been described part of the individual body. 13.6. It means that the world and the body are essentially the same. If we accept the body as one, it gives birth to egoism-ness, and if we accept the body as mine, it gives birth to mindness, and both of these lead to bondage. If we realize that the body and the world belong to one and the same class, and the man himself, soul, and God belong to one class, which is quite different from that of the body and the world, egoism, ness, and mindness perish automatically. These can be wiped out by the three disciplines of action, 271, knowledge, 1853, and devotion, 1213. It means that the assumed affinity for matter should be broken off, and it can be by accepting reality through discrimination. An exceptional fact: a teacher and a pupil have their own separate entity or existence. But by having love and regard for each other, their middle dot is a further affinity between the two. Similarly, the soul, which is a fragment of the Lord, has accepted its affinity with the body and the world. It is because of this affinity that there appears to be a third entity, which is called ness. This affinity of ness is merely assumed, not real. But the soul, by accepting it as real, gets into bondage. A teacher and a pupil have a separate existence, and both of them accept their affinity for each other. But, out of the soul, sentient, and the world, insentient or matter, only the soul has its own existence. By an error it accepts its relationship with the world, which is changing and perishing every moment. This assumed relationship is also decaying every moment. But it seems real to those who want to seek pleasure in the world. It is because of their attachment for worldly pleasures that a world, which is never attained, seems to be attained, while God, who is ever attainable, seems unattained to them. As soon as they are free from this assumed affinity for the world, they will realize the reality of their affinity, that they have their affinity for God, and only He, not the world, can be attained. To wipe out this feeling of ness, a striver should have a firm belief that he is different from matter. He should not expect anything from the world, but perform actions for the service of the world, because, whatever strength, intelligence and resources he possesses, he has received from the world. By following this discipline of action, the direction of actions and objects is towards the world, and the self remains, so he attains self-realization. By following the discipline of knowledge, also by using discrimination, a striver, by breaking off his affinity for things and actions of the world, attains self-realization. Thus, by breaking off his affinity for matter, he becomes free from his assumed ness. Devotion to God is aroused in the discipline of devotion, by accepting I am only God's, and only God is in teacher-taught relationship. The duty of the teacher is to do good to the pupil, and the duty of the pupil is to serve the teacher. In the same way, every relationship of the world is to do good to others or serve others without any selfish motive. Mine, I am not of the body and the world, and the body and the world are not mine. Then a striver, having disinclination for the world, depends only on God, and thus he becomes free from the affinity of the world and egoism, ness. Thus, by following the discipline of action, the discipline of knowledge, or the discipline of devotion, in the right perspective, a striver becomes free from the affinity of matter and realizes God. Appendix: when the self gets identified with the lower nature, viz., is identified with ego and assumes itself I am, then by becoming an embodied soul, it is called higher nature. On one side of the ego, I, there is the world, lower nature, and on the other side there is God. But the embodied soul, instead of accepting God, accepts his lower nature and sustains it in the form of the world, which leads him to the bondage of birth and death. Different from a para, lower, is para, higher, and different from para is a para. A para is different, viz., belongs to another class. By catching, sustaining the alien, this para has become jiva, embodied soul. A para, kaleidoscopic, and para, unchangeable. Both are God's nature, viz., power. Being powers of God, both are identified with God, because without the powerful, the power has no independent existence. As nail and hair, in spite of being lifeless, are not different from the living body, similarly the lower nature, in spite of being insentient, is not different from God who is sentient. Gita 9:19. In this way, when a para and para, both prakritis, are the embodiments of God, then what remains besides God? Nothing remains. Sivajudavasarvam. Gita 7:19. God's integral form consists of both para and apara nature, meaning that para, apara sat, as at sentient and insentient all are God. Yajrayaji God means that this world has no existence in the eye of God as well as in the eye of an exalted soul. It exists only in the eye of the individual soul. In the eye of God Sat and as at all is he himself Agayili TJ, Gita 9:19, and in the eye of the exalted soul all is God, Gita 7:19. A man, the embodied soul, because of attachment and aversion has sustained the world in his intellect. The same fact has been pointed out in the 7th verse of the 15th chapter by the expression mana. By cognizing the existence of the world, attachment and aversion arise. The embodied self assumed the existence of the world and attached importance to it. By attaching importance, the desire for pleasure sprang up which in its turn led it to the cycle of birth and death. It means that by assuming any other entity besides God, the being has been ensnared in the worldly bondage. Therefore it is the being's responsibility not to assume any other entity besides God. If it does not assume the entity of the world, where is the world? The Lord declares that earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intellect, ego, these 8 constitute apara, insentient, prakriti. As the earth is insentient and is to be known, so is ego insentient and is to be known. It means that earth, water, etc., all the 8 belong to the same jati, viz., class, category. Therefore if there is one thing common in several things, that is called jati. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intellect and ego. In these 8 there is oneness of jati, class, but there is not oneness of form, viz., in spite of one class, their forms are different. Therefore it has been called asthata, eightfold. Being the evolutes of a paraprakriti, lower nature, here earth, water, etc., have been called a paraprakriti. The earth is gross. Water is more subtle than earth. Fire is more subtle than water. Air is more subtle than fire. Ether is more subtle than air. Mind is more subtle than ether. Intellect is more subtle than mind. Ego is more subtle than intellect. The class to which the earth belongs, ego also belongs to the same class, viz., ego like a clod is insentient and is objective in nature. Therefore the Lord has mentioned ego as this atadyo vedi, Gita 13:1. 8 this, is never aham, I. Therefore the Lord by saying ego as this means that ego is not the self. When the sentient, self, identifies itself with ego, then it gets bound. Gita 3:27. This is called Sajjata Granthi. The pure ego is matter, insentient, in its nature and belongs to the apara-prakriti, lower nature, but I am this identified ego is not only of apara-prakriti but it is conjoined with para-prakriti, sentient. On self-realization the latter ego, which leads to birth and death, does not persist but the former, ego of apara-prakriti, remains. Actions and objects are neither in para-prakriti nor in God but they are in apara-prakriti. Apara-prakriti is in the form of actions and objects. The Lord with the help of prakriti brings into being the whole creation. Para-prakriti, viz., the embodied soul, by being attached to actions and objects, apara-prakriti, and depending on them, gets bound. Attachment to the apara-prakriti and dependence on it means to sustain the world. Therefore the Lord at the very beginning of the 7th chapter has mentioned to be attached to him and to take refuge in him by the expression. If a striver, the embodied soul, is not attached to apara-prakriti and does not take refuge in it he will attain salvation. If he is attached to, loves, God and takes refuge in him, he will become a bhakta, devotee. The world has no independent existence. The soul has cognized the existence of the world which leads it to bondage. The soul sustains the world which causes pleasure, pain, bondage in apara-prakriti. Ego is the most subtle. Thus the Lord has described apara-prakriti from the gross to the subtle in due order, and leads it to the 84 IAC forms of life, to the life of ghosts, evil spirits, devils and deities, etc., and also paves the way to hells. Sattva, Raja, Arid, Tanya. The 3 modes don't cause any obstacle but attachment of the modus carries it to higher regions or middle regions or lower regions. Gita 13:21. The soul itself gets attached to the modes. Apara-prakriti does not get attached to anyone. Neither prakriti nor modes, nor senses nor mind nor intellect gets attached. But the embodied soul itself gets attached and thus it feels pleasure and pain and follows the cycle of birth and death. The soul is independent because it is para, viz., the higher nature. The poor Prakriti knows nothing because it is insentient and is free from desire. The being getting attached to it and making proper use or misuse of it, goes to high, good, and low, evil, wombs and goes astray. It means that the being, in spite of being unchangeable, being attached to the changeable world, becomes the kaleidoscopic world, embodied soul. Gita 7:13. It has an eye on the body only, it does not even think of its divine nature. The self identifies itself with the world, viz., with the body, senses, mind, intellect, ego, which is altogether different from it. This is sustenance of the world. In fact, the world is not ours, because if we had attained the thing which is ours, our desires would have ended forever and we would have been free from mindness, fear, worries and desires. But the world can't afford us such a thing which is ours, viz., of which there is never any disunion. The entity which is ours can't be attained by the world but can be attained by renouncing attachment to the world. Our thing, entity, is God. We are the fragments of that God. Estma mavam so. Jivalok, Gita 1517. The method to attain him, from the viewpoint of Karmaga, is that the objects, body etc., received from the world, should be used to hear. The term Jagat stands for the changeable, render service to the world, without desiring any fruit. A striver should be attached to any action or object. It is better not to yon than to serve them. If we don't harm anyone and do not do evil to others, service will be naturally rendered to them. We shall have not to render it. We are not proud of the action which takes place itself, and there is no desire for its fruit. Having renounced pride and the desire for fruit, we attain the thing which is really ours. In fact, a Prakriti has no separate existence at all besides God. The individual self has cognized its Prakriti's special existence. As money has no importance of its own, but we attach importance to it because of our greed for it. We are attracted towards the object to which we attach importance. We attach importance when we accept evil, i.e., some faults. It is due to the evil of lust for sex. There is attraction for woman because of the evil of greed. There is attraction for money because of the evil of delusion. There is attraction for family and so on. But when we identify ourselves with those evils, we don't perceive those evils as evils, and we don't know that we, by assuming their Prakriti's existence, are attaching importance to them. When this identification is wiped out, evils stay no more in us, and if we don't do evil to others, there will be two things: either we shall do nothing, or if we do, only service will be rendered. By doing nothing and by serving others, by these two things, attachment to the world is renounced. The reason is that by doing nothing, no evil is done, and by the service which is rendered itself to others, all evils are wiped out. As while eating food a man holds I eat, thus the pride which is attached is not attached in the digestion of food, because food is digested itself. Similarly, when service is rendered itself, the pride of doership and attachment to the fruit of action are naturally renounced. All the worldly pleasures are born of evils. When we accept evils, they seem to provide pleasure. Because of the lust for sex, a man can't live without woman. Because of greed, a man can't live without wealth. Because of delusion, a man can't live without family. It is because of evils that a man can't perceive the value of renunciation. Virtues are not apparent, viz., they don't come to light. In endless universes, 3 worlds, 14 spheres, insentient sentient, unmoving moving, land creatures, aquatic creatures, sky creatures, placental born from egg, born off perspiration sprouting from ground, Satvika Rajasa Tamasa, men, deities, manis, celestial musicians, animals, birds, insects, moths, ghost spirits, devils, Brahmarakshasa, demons, etc. Whatever beings are seen, heard, studied and imagined, in all of them there is nothing besides the 2 natures, Prakriti para, higher, and Apara, lower. Whatever is seen, heard, studied and imagined, and the body, senses, mind, intellect, ego, by which the actions of seeing, hearing, studying and imagining are performed, are all Apara. But he who sees, hears, studies, thinks, knows, assumes is para. Para and Apara, both being the powers of God, are inseparable from God, viz., they are the manifestations of God. Therefore, in the inside and outside of endless universes and in the form of infinite universes, there is nothing else besides God. Vasudeva Sarvam, 7:19. 919. All the philosophies and diverse opinions of the world have been propounded by their heads, Akuryas, but Vasudevasarvam is not the philosophy or opinion of a particular Akurya, head, but it is the irreversible principle of Lord Krishna within which all philosophies and diverse opinions are included. The individual self has assumed the independent existence of the para world. Apara is God's, but this self is bound because it has assumed apara viz, body, senses, mind, intellect, ego, its own and for itself. Therefore if a striver perceives, sees, the world, it is his personal view. The personal view is not a principle. Whatever is seen is limited while the reality is limitless. As the sun appears like a metallic dish, but actually it is not of the size of a metallic dish, but it is several times bigger than the earth. If the world is in cognizance of a striver, he should serve it in a disinterested manner. The assumption that the world is his and for him, and also the tendency to derive pleasure out of it, is anti-spiritual discipline and is the cause of bondage. The reason is that the body, senses, mind, intellect, etc., whatever we have, is of the world and for the world. Therefore if the things received from the world are used in rendering service to the world will not appear as the world, but it will be seen as the manifestation of God, which really it is. It means whether a striver assumes the world as true or the self as true or God as true, by any one of the assumptions, he can practice spiritual discipline and can attain the Mala reality Vasudevasarvam. Link in the previous verse, Lord Krishna said, the higher, sentient, nature, has sustained the lower, insentient, nature. He clarifies it, in the next verse. Know, that all beings middle. Have evolved from this twofold prakriti, the insentient and the sentient nature. I am the origin, prabhava, of the entire creation and then, it dissolves in me. Pralaya. 6. Comment. Alf beings, gods, men, animals, birds, etc., which move, and also trees, creepers and grass, etc., which do not move, have their origin in the union of my insentient and sentient nature. In the 26th verse of the 13th chapter also, the Lord declares, whatever being, moving or unmoving, is born, know that, as emanated from the union of etc., matter, and ksetrajna, spirit. The same fact has been pointed out, in the 4th verse of the 14th chapter, when he declares, my prakriti, nature, primordial matter, is the womb of the bodies of creatures, and the soul, seed, which resides in those bodies, is my fragment. The same seed or soul, has been called his higher, sentient, nature, 7.5, and his eternal portion, 1517. In the universe all the moving and unmoving creatures, are born of the union of the sentient and the insentient nature, matter. It means, that soul has accepted matter, as its own, and keeps its company, and so beings are born. So think of this fact, i.e., understand it in the right perspective, or accept it. All objects emanate from God, and again dissolve in him. So the Lord declares, I am the origin of the entire creation, and again it dissolves in me. The Lord is the source of entire creation because creation comes into existence by his will. Chandogya 6.2.3. As a potter makes earthenwares and a goldsmith makes ornaments of gold, so does the Lord create this world. Thus, like a potter and a goldsmith, he is an efficient cause of this world. The universe again dissolves in him. As an earthen vessel is of clay, it was clay in the past, before it was molded into this shape, and will remain clay when vessel is broken into pieces. Similarly, the creation is born of the Lord, resides in him and merges, dissolves, in him. Thus, he is the material cause of this creation. This is knowledge. The realization, that in the world there is nothing besides the manifestation of the Lord, is vijnana, real knowledge of manifest divinity. There is a fact which needs attention, that only ksetrajvaya, spirit, not etc., matter, has accepted this affinity. If it does not accept this affinity, it can't be reborn because, attachment to these gunas, modes, is the cause of his birth in good and evil wombs. 1321. In the expression Kritsanasu Jigata, Lord Krishna declares himself to be the origin of entire creation, and also its dissolution. Here it is appropriate for him to talk of himself as the origin and dissolution of matter, in sentient nature. But how is the origin of soul, sentient or higher nature, and its dissolution, possible? The soul is eternal, omnipresent, immovable, constant and everlasting. Gita 21:24. while the world is ever changing. But, here the word creation denotes both the lower nature, matter, and higher nature, soul. The reason is, though the soul is eternal, changeless and constant, yet it identifies itself with perishable matter and thus accepts its insentience, creation and dissolution as its sentience, own creation and dissolution. So, the soul is said to be born and decayed. Therefore, Lord Krishna has declared himself to be the origin of the entire creation and also its end. Thus, within creation, i.e., all the moving, unmoving sentient, insentient beings, will be included. Moreover, Lord Krishna, in the 13th verse of this chapter, declares, the whole of this creation, being deluded by objects evolved from the three modes of nature, does not know me. Only the sentient can know him. Therefore the term Jagat, universe, includes both matter, the insentient, as well as soul, the sentient. In the 8th verse of the 16th chapter, according to men of demoniacal traits, the universe includes both insentient and sentient beings, because they accept all beings, not only insentient ones, as unreal. If the term Jagat, universe, is interpreted as only matter, the followers of non-dualistic principles, who accept the universe as unreal, untrue and baseless, will be included among men of demoniacal traits, which is totally improper and unjustified. Similarly, in the 26th verse of the 8th chapter, there is description of the two paths, the bright and the darkness of the world. But the paths can be followed by the sentient only. The sentient, by identifying with matter, is called Jagat, world or universe. Omnipotent God. The entire creation which is appearing, he is its efficient cause and he is also its material cause, viz., he creates the universe and he himself is created as the universe. He is the protector and he is the protected. The same sole universal, God destroys the universe and he himself is the universe which is destroyed. In Taittiriya Upanishad it is mentioned, I am food and I am also the eater of the food. 3.10.6. It means that apara and para-prakriti and all beings that are born by their union, all of them are only God. The cause is also God and the effect is also God. Link in the preceding verse, Lord Krishna declared himself to be the origin of the whole universe, world. In the next verse, he declares that besides him there is nothing else in the universe. O Arjuna, of this world there is no other cause higher than me. As yarn beads are strung on the thread, so all the worlds are permeated by me. 7. There is nothing else besides me, the origin of the universe. As there is born of ether, resides in ether and merges in ether without having any independent existence of its own, so is the universe born of the Lord, remains established in him and merges in him, i.e., the universe has no independent existence of its own, besides the Lord. Here the term paradram means that the Lord is the root cause of all things, persons, incidents, circumstances and time etc., of the world. He is the cause of all causes. There is no cause of him. It means that they all seem to exist in his true light, only he pervades all of them. Lord Krishna, in the 2nd verse of this chapter, announced that he would unfold in full the knowledge, wisdom, along with real knowledge of the manifest divinity, Vijnana, having known which, nothing else would remain to be known. But, here he declares that there is no other origin of the universe besides him. In both the verses, by using the expression na and not know anything, he means that, when there is nothing besides him, how can anything else remain to be known after knowing him? Therefore, Lord Krishna says, all this is threaded, strung, on me, and further, he declares all is God. 7.19, and lamb being and non-being both. 9.19. The effect has no independent entity, except its cause. The cause only is manifest in its effect. When the cause is realized, known, the effect merges in the cause. It means that the effect has no separate identity from the cause. Similarly, it can be realized that God is the cause and the world is the effect. Hence, the world has no separate entity from God. This is God realization. Actually, it is he who manifests himself in different forms, i.e., this universe is nothing besides divine manifestation. Thus a striver will come to know that the entire universe is his manifestation. The middle whole universe, like clusters of yarn beads formed by knots on a string, is threaded on me. As in the cluster of yarn beads and in the thread, there is nothing besides the thread in the world, there is nothing else, besides the Lord. As the beads and thread, though being one and the same, seem different, all the beings having different shapes and names, seem to be different, but actually, it is all divine manifestation. Lord Krishna, in the second verse of the 13th chapter, declares, "Know myself to be the kshatrajvaya, soul, in all the kshetras, fields or matter." It means that his lower nature in the form of beads, is his own self, and his higher nature in the form of thread, is also his own self. He pervades both the two. So long as a striver attaches importance to the world, he cannot realize God, who pervades everywhere, in this universe. But, when one comes to know the reality, he realizes that he and only he pervades, everywhere, and there is nothing else, besides him. To stress the fact, that all things are pervaded only by God, the Lord has described himself, as the cause of all manifestations. Appendix: as the clusters of yarn beads formed by knots on a string are threaded, in them there is nothing besides the thread. Similarly in the world there is nothing else besides God. It means that a paraprakriti in the form of yarn beads and paraprakriti in the form of the thread, in both only God pervades. In the formation of yarn beads there is predominance of a paraprakriti, and in the formation of thread there is predominance of paraprakriti. The term managanal has been given in plural number, which means that the aparaprakriti consisting of unmoving, moving, aquatic creatures, land creatures, sky creatures, 14 spheres and 84 lakh forms of life, etc., is divided into infinite forms and infinite groups. The distinction between apara and para is because of the aparaprakriti, as the soul, by assuming the existence of the apara, by valuing it and by establishing relationship with it, has become the embodied soul. 5th verse of this chapter. Therefore aparaprakriti is there in the world as well in the embodied soul. But in God there is neither apara, nor para, nor the world, nor the embodied soul. It means that there is neither thread nor beads, but only cotton is there. Similarly there is neither apara nor para, but there is only God. The same fact has been described by the Lord ahead up to the 12th verse. From the term mata used in this verse up to the expression mata eva used in the 12th verse, the Lord has mentioned this fact that there is nothing else besides him. Here the term mata denotes entire God, God in full, who is the owner of both prakriti para and apara. The cause changes into effect as cotton is changed into thread and the seed grows into a plant. Therefore God, being the supreme cause of all, only he manifests himself in all forms. Therefore it is a misperception to see any other entity besides God. He who is better, superior, of the two is called paratra. God is unique, unparalleled, besides him. There is nothing else. Then how can he be paratra, superior to anyone? The term paratra does not apply to him. Here the term paratra has been used in order to mention the uniqueness of God. It means that there is nothing else besides God, and therefore there is no question of anyone being superior to him. In the Upanishad it is mentioned, Katha 1:3-11, there is nothing else besides that Purusa. He is the highest limit and the supreme destination of all. Arjuna, while addressing Lord Krishna, also says, in all the three worlds, there is none equal to you who could then possibly excel you. Gita 11:43. Middle. Now Lord Krishna, in the verses 8th to 12th, declares that he himself becomes all the manifestations. O son of Kunti, I am the taste in water, radiance in the moon and the sun. I am the sacred syllable Om, in the Vedas, sound in ether, and manliness, in men. Comment: generally people attach a lot of importance to money. So, greedy people have a natural inclination to earn money and accumulate it. Similarly, by accepting the fact that the Lord is the source of the entire creation, 7:6, there is no existence of the creation besides the Lord. By accepting this fact, a striver has his natural inclination towards him without making any effort. The same fact has been pointed out by the Lord, in the 8th verse of the 10th chapter, when he declares, I am the source of the creation, all things evolve from me. Knowing this, the wise adore me, with all their heart. In the 46th verse of the 18th chapter, he declares, he from whom the evolution of all beings is, by whom all this is pervaded, worshipping him through the performance of his own duty, man attains perfection. Here the same principle is explained further. Rezoam ipsu Kantia, O son of Kunti. I am sapidity in water. Water emanates from a subtle form of sapidity, Rajasthan Matra. It remains in it and it merges in it. If a taste is removed from water, water cannot remain water. I am radiant set, light, in the causes of the five gross elements earth, water, fire, air and ether are respectively smell, taste, form, touch and sound, which are called five Tanmatra, seeds. These five seeds can't be known by senses and mind, but they are only assumed by hearing the scriptures. The evolutes of these five seeds are also smell, taste, form, touch and sound, which can be known by senses and mind. In subtle element fire there are two powers: radiance, brilliance, and combustion, burning. Radiance is called Prabha and combustion is known as Teha. The power of radiance can function without the power of combustion, as in gems and the moon, but the power of combustion can't function without radiance. Here in this verse there is predominance of radiance, while in the 9th verse of moon and the sun. Without radiance the moon and the sun will lose their essence. I am the syllable Om in all the Vedas. First of all, there was revelation of the syllable Om. It was from this sacred syllable Om that Gayatri was revealed, and it was from Gayatri that the Vedas were revealed. Therefore, the gist of the Vedas is the sacred syllable Om. Ether emanates from the subtle element, sound. It remains in it and merges in it. Therefore, sound manifests itself as ether. Without sound, ether is meaningless. I am manliness and men. It is not enough for a man to possess the human body in order to gain worldly riches, knowledge, name and fame, etc., but all these are perishable. The real man is he who has attained God realization, the ultimate aim of human life. God existed in the past, exists now and will also exist in future, because he is eternal. Therefore, a man's purusartha exertion consists in making efforts with promptness and zeal to realize God. Without attaining him, human life is in vain. Appendix: in the 6th and 7th verses the Lord has mentioned that he is the cause of the entire creation. Therefore now the Lord describes his divine glories in the form of cause from the 8th verse to the 12th verse. Though the effect has special characteristic which is not found in the cause, yet the cause has its independent existence, viz., without cause the effect has no independent existence. As earth, clay, is the cause and jar is its effect. Water can be filled in a jar, but this characteristic is not found in the earth. But without earth, clay, a jar has no independent existence. It means that the cause is changed. This chapter there is predominance of the power of combustion. So there the term Teha has been used. The sun and fire possess both of these powers, while in the moon there is only radiance, and instead of combustion there is mildness. Into effect. In making a jar, the doer, the material, cause, and the effect, the three are not one, viz., the cause, clay, and the effect, gar, are of one class, but the doer, potter, has his different, independent, existence. But in creating the universe the doer, the material and the effect, these three are only God. Therefore sapidity is also God, and water is also God. Radiance is also God, and the moon and the sun are also God. Om is also God, and the Veda is also God. Sound is also God, and ether is also God. Manliness is also God, and man is also God. The earth is changed into the form of a jar, but God does not change into the form of the world. The reason is that the thing which is changed is mutable, while God is immutable. As in the dark, a string, rope, appears in the form of a snake, or the snake appears in the form of a coil. Similarly, God appears in the form of the world. It means that in God there is no distinction of effect and cause, because there is nothing besides him. There is a distinction between the cause and the effect from the man's point of view. Therefore, in order to explain it to men, by assuming the existence of some other thing or the other, God is described, discussed, considered and reflected upon, and there are questions and answers, etc. On him I am pure fragrance of the earth, the luster in fire, I am the life force in all beings, and austerity in ascetics. 9. Comment: the earth is born of subtle element, smell, stays with it, and merges in it. The earth is of no importance without pure fragrance. Fragrance is a characteristic of earth. So, the Lord declares, I am pure fragrance in earth. The Lord uses the objective punya, pure, in order to explain that naturally there is pure fragrance in the earth. But bad smell is produced because it becomes polluted. Combustion is born of subtle element, fire, is inherent in it, and at the end, merges in it. Therefore, in fire combustion is the essence. In fire, if there is no combustion it is useless. So the Lord is that combustion. Lord Krishna declares, I am life, in all beings. All beings possess life power, by which they are alive. It is because of that power, that man even in sound sleep, remains different from a dead man. Endurance, in the pairs of opposites, is called austerity, japa. But real austerity, is that in which a striver remains uniform, unchanged, unaffected in difficulties, which he has to face, in realizing God. This austerity, is an invaluable possession, of ascetics. Without austerity, they cannot be called ascetics. So Lord Krishna declares, I am, austerity in ascetics. Appendix in the creation of the universe God is the agent, doer, God is the cause and God is the effect. Therefore smell and earth, luster, combustion, and fire, life power and beings, austerity and ascetic all of them, cause and effect, are only God. The reason is that para and apara both being the power of God are inseparable from him. Therefore the entire universe which is born by the union of para and apara is only the manifestation of God. Gandhita and Matra, smell subtle element, is the cause and earth is its effect. By calling the smell pure the Lord means to say that the cause, Tanmatra, is ever pure. Impurity is caused by alteration, modification, in the effect. Therefore as fragrance Tanmatra is pure, similarly sound, touch, color and taste Tanmatras should also be considered pure. O Partha, know me as the eternal, Sanatana, seed of all beings. I am the intelligence of the intelligent, the glory, splendor, of the glorious. 10 Comment Partha, I am the eternal seed, source, of all beings. All of them, are born of me, who am their seed, they live in me and in the end, merge in me. They without me have no existence of their own. A seed, grows out of a tree and it perishes, after creating a tree. But the seed, described in this verse, is eternal without its origin and end. In the 18th verse of the 9th chapter, it has been called an imperishable seed. Remaining imperishable and unaltered, this eternal seed, is the source, producer, resort and illuminator, of the entire universe. In the Glita, the word seed, has been used, both for God and the embodied soul. In this verse, seed denotes God, because here, the divine glories have been described. In the 39th verse of the 10th chapter also, the word seed denotes God because there, Lord Krishna declares, I am the seed of all beings. In the 18th verse of the 9th chapter also, this word as in the 6th verse of this chapter Lord Krishna used the term, know, and here he uses the term vidi, know. It means that he wants to say that the striver should understand, know and accept the fact that the universe is nothing besides the divine manifestation, been used for God, because, in the 19th verse of that chapter, Lord Krishna middle dot says, LM being and non-being both. 2 In the 4th verse of the 14th chapter, the time seed, stands for embodied soul. The seed, signifies the embodied soul, only when comma middle dot it has accepted its affinity for matter, nature, otherwise it is a super soul, God. Middle dot. I am the intelligence, of the intelligent. People are called intelligent, only because of their intelligence, otherwise they would be called dull. The Lord, is the glory of the glorious. This glory is a divine trait. Liberated souls, possess a special aura, which enables even dissolute and immoral persons, to become virtuous and exceptional. Fact God, is the origin of the whole universe. He always pervades, everywhere. He exists, even when the entire universe perishes. In the universe, there is nothing besides God. Therefore, in the Upanishads, parts of different branches of Vedas, there are illustrations of gold, middle dot clay and iron. As in ornaments, made of gold, there is nothing besides gold. In the pots made of clay there is nothing besides clay, and in the arms and weapons made of iron, there is nothing besides iron. Similarly, in the entire universe which is born of God, there is nothing besides God. In the Gita Lord Krishna, has given the illustration of a seed. A seed, is born of a tree and after giving birth to a tree, it perishes. But, God is not an ordinary seed, he is an eternal seed, 7:10, and an imperishable one, 9:18. It means, that unlike an ordinary seed which after creating another tree, perishes, he does not perish, he remains the same. Gold, clay and iron, are seen with physical eyes, in ornaments, earthenwares and arms respectively, but God is not seen in the world. So the seed too is not seen in a tree. When a tree sprouts the seed in the form of fruit, then we come to know that the tree is born of that particular seed, though the tree grows out of a seed and ends in a seed. Similarly, God is the seed of the entire universe. This universe is born of him, and merges in him. In the end only God remains. Srimad Bhagavata 10.3.25. Those who see only the tree in the world instead of the seed and God, do not observe in the right perspective. It is only he who reveals himself, in various forms. Chandogya 6.213. The universe, including a body, is made of 5 subtle elements: earth, water, fire, air and ether, but it so appears only if we think over it deeply, otherwise not. If we say that these physical bodies are made of earth because there is predominance of earth element, people without a deep thought do not believe, because they say that bodies are different from earth, clay, with which they wash hands. But if the entire universe is burnt to ashes, nothing will remain besides earth, clay. If we think deeply, we come to know that a body is born of the parent's sperm and ovum, which arise from grain, grown out of earth. Thus a body is said to be born of earth. In the end, it merges in earth. After death a body is either buried, or burned or eaten by animals and birds. In neither case it returns into earth. Thus, the origin and end of a body is earth. It means that its middle is also earth, though it is not seen with physical eyes but it can be conceived by thought. Similarly, by thinking seriously, the world can be perceived as a manifestation of the Lord. In the entire universe, there is nothing else besides the Lord. Having created the universe, the bodies, he has also entered it. Taittiriya Upanishad 2:6. He, as the self, soul, also abides in these bodies. Thus the entire universe is his manifestation. Appendix: the Lord's purpose in calling himself the seed of all beings is that all beings are his manifestation. There are infinite universes, and in those universes there are endless beings. But the seed of those endless beings is only God. In spite of the creation of endless universes, there is no diminution in that seed, because that seed is not subject to diminution. Gita 9:18. With that one seed several kinds of universes are born. Gita 10:39. We may scan the seed with a keen sight, subtle sight, yet the fruit, flowers and leaves will not be visible in it because they are latent in that seed in their causative form. Even the two leaves born of the same tree are not similar. Even this diversity is present in that seed. There are several kinds of a thing in the universe. In different countries there are several castes, classes, of human beings. In their bodies there is so much difference that even the lines of the thumbs of two men are not similar. Their shapes, natures, interests, temperaments, assumptions and feelings etc. are also different. There are several kinds of cows, buffaloes, sheeps, goats, horses, camels and dogs etc. And in each kind, class, there are several subclasses. Among trees also each kind of tree has several classes. Similarly there are endless differences in each kind of knowledge, art. There are 3 main colors and by their mixture several colors are formed. Out of them in each color there are so many differences that two men don't perceive a color similarly. Thus in the universe any two things, which appear similar, are not really similar. In spite of so much diversity, the seed of the universe is only one. It means that God alone manifests himself in numberless forms, and in spite of manifesting himself in different forms he remains one. God is endless from all viewpoints such as place and time. In spite of diversity among beings, there should be the unity of love among them. As a thorn pricks the foot but the eyes are filled with tears, the same feeling for the welfare of others should prevail among all beings. Gita 5:25, 1214. Only love is the feeling which knows no distinction. There can't be any distinction in love. All become one in love. In knowledge there is no difference in reality but differences in opinions persist. In love there is no difference in opinions. Therefore there is nothing beyond love. By love even the Lord of the 3 worlds becomes submissive to the will of the lover, etc. When even the universe created by God is endless, limitless, how can a limit be set to God? Up to this day whatever has been thought of, Whatever has been said, whatever has been written, whatever has been assumed about God, even if all this is combined, it remains incomplete about him. Not only this, even God himself can't describe the full details about himself. If he is able to describe it, how will he remain endless? O Arjuna, I am the strength of the strong without their desire and passion in beings. I am desire that is not in conflict with virtue or scriptural injunction. Comment: the strength, free from desire and attachment, utilized on noble and holy cause and sanctioned by scripture and saints, gets sanctified, and therefore the Lord declares, I am the strength of the strong, free from desire and attachment. This strength is acceptable. Lord Krishna himself has explained that the strength possessed of attachment and desire should be abandoned, 17.5, because it is a demoniacal trait. Similar is the case with strength used in 1614, 1618 and 1853. In 634, it has been used as an adjective for mind, and it is a demoniacal trait, because it also possesses attachment and desire. Thus, such strength, power, is to be abandoned. But strength free from desire and attachment, as explained in 711 as well as in 17.8, is sanctified strength, which is acceptable. I am righteous passion approved by the scriptures. Desire, free from attachment and pleasure, is laudable, because it helps in producing offsprings and it remains under control of man. But sexual desire, possessed of attachment and pleasure, misguides a man, enables him to perform actions against dictates of scriptures and leads him to afflictions, sins and degradation. People who, by using birth control methods, indulge in sexual intercourse for sensual pleasure, pave their way to hell. Men and women, in the true sense of the terms, are those who have the capacity to produce children. Otherwise they are impotent, and eunuch is not authorized to perform religious rites, such as religious sacrifice and offer water and food etc. to manes. A woman is called a mother, because she gives birth to children, who call her mother. If the potentiality of generating children is destroyed, she no more deserves to be addressed as mother, a very venerable vocative. Therefore, strivers should have sexual desire to produce children, according to ordinance of the scripture, in order to lead a pious family life, or they should observe celibacy. Appendix: the entire moving universe is born of passion. Therefore a man's passion not conflicting with righteousness and which is approved by the scriptures, is the manifestation of God. The Lord has already declared, 7:7, there is nothing else besides me, and further he will declare, 7:12, all entities born of sattva, rajasa and tamasa are evolved from me, and vajudava sarvam, 7:19. All is God. Therefore just as righteous desire is the manifestation of God, similarly unrighteous passion is also not different from God. Those who act being guided by unrighteous desires, pave the way to hells. In the forms here the desire stands for the desire of the householders sanctioned by the scriptures, rather than the desire which has been mentioned as the most sinful in the 37th verse of the 3rd chapter of God, because hells are also God only. But the aim of the Gita is not to lead a man to hell or to the cycle of birth and death, but is to lead him to the attainment of salvation. The aim is ever for salvation or bliss, not for sufferings. No one wants pain, suffering. Arjuna has also entreated Lord Krishna to tell him the highest good for him. For example, words are good and also bad, but in grammar only the good words are reflected upon, because grammar etc. also aim at a man's salvation. Whatever entities are born of sattva, mode of goodness or purity, of rajas, modi of activity or passion, and tamash, the mode of inertia or ignorance, know them all, as evolved from me, yet still neither I am in them, nor are they in me. 12. Comment: it means that in the entire universe, all the gunas, attributes of things and actions, evolve from God. He is the root, support, base and illuminator of all of these. Whatever singularity is seen in the entire universe, that is the Lord's. So, a man should have inclination towards him, rather than towards the mode of goodness etc. This inclination towards God will lead him to emancipation, while inclination towards the mode of goodness etc. will lead him to bondage. Actually all the objects, attributes, modes, and actions, are, Gita 2:17, Gita 312, Gita 5:1, nothing else, besides the manifestation of the Lord. Now a question arises, When every action is a manifestation of the Lord, why is there sanction or prohibition for these? The answer is that actions which are sanctioned by scriptures result in favorable and happy circumstances, while actions which are prohibited, forbidden, result in unfavorable and sad circumstances. So, if a person performs forbidden actions, regarding these as manifestation of the Lord as a result of those actions will manifest himself in the form of punishment and hell. As far as actions are concerned, a striver should perform only those actions which are sanctioned by the scriptures. As far as acceptance, assumption, and knowledge are concerned, one should accept that God exists and he should know the self or the world. By assuming the existence of God, he should develop a keen desire to attain him. He should try to please him, by obeying him and by following his principles. He should also know that bodies and the universe are kaleidoscopic and perishable, and these are neither his nor meant for him. By knowing this fact, he should cease attachment for them. By doing so, he will realize the reality. But, even after knowing the fact that they are perishable, if a striver attaches importance to them, he will not be able to attain emancipation. Mata eviti tan vidi, all are evolved from the Lord, viz. He is all in all, the cause and the effect, which seems distinct. But, the effect has no separate and independent existence from the cause. Therefore, the effect is a manifestation of the cause only. As an ornament's made of gold, there is nothing else besides gold. Similarly, the universe evolved from God is nothing else besides God. By using the phrase Mata Eva, Lord Krishna means that his lower nature and higher nature are not different from him. As an appendix to the 7th chapter in the 9th chapter, Lord Krishna declares, "Through my nature, I bring forth again and again all this multitude of beings." 9:8. And further, he declares, "With me as the supervisor, nature brings forth the whole creation." 9:10. Actually, both of the declarations are one and the same. In both the cases, there is predominance of God. The same fact has been pointed out here in 7:6. I am the source and the end of the entire universe. While concluding it, he declares, "Whatever entities there are born of sattva, rajas and tamas, know them all, as evolved from me." The Lord, having promised to discuss knowledge and realization, started the topic by mentioning that among thousands, one scarcely knows him, in truth. Then, having explained his higher and lower natures, he mentioned these as the source of all beings. Then, he explained that he is the source of the universe. 717. The same fact has been pointed out here, while concluding the topic of his divine glories, when he declares, "Know that the sattva, mode of goodness, the rajas, mode of passion, and the tamas, mode of ignorance, are evolved from me. I am not in them, and they are not in me." It means that those attributes have no independent existence of their own, besides the Lord. All actions, objects, are born and then they decay. If the Lord had been in them, with their decay he would have also decayed. But, he never decays. It means that he is not in them. If they had been in him, they should have also been imperishable, like him. But it is not so. They perish, while he is eternal. It means that they are not in him. As a seed takes the shape of a tree with its branches, leaves, flowers, etc., but these cannot be perceived in it. Similarly, nature, constituted of the three categories, modes, sattva, rajas and tamas, has origin in him, but he is not perceived in them. Actually, there is nothing else besides him. As clouds evolve from ether, reside in ether and dissolve in ether, yet ether remains the same, without any modification. All the divine glories, described from the 8th verse up, know this,